2 title, What If Time Moved Backwards and You Aged in Reverse? Documentary for Sleep. Hello there, and welcome. Tonight I want to take you somewhere extraordinary. Somewhere that exists not in a distant galaxy or on an unexplored planet, but right here, right now, in the very fabric of the moment you're experiencing as you listen to these words. I want to take you to a place where the most fundamental assumption we make about our existence, that time moves forward, always forward, gently dissolves like morning mist over a still lake. Tonight, we're going to explore together what might happen, what could happen, what perhaps is happening somewhere in the vast expanse of our universe if time itself decided to flow backwards, and you, dear listener, aged in reverse. Before we drift deeper into this cosmic contemplation, I'd love to know where you're joining me from tonight. What corner of our beautiful planet are you resting in right now? Is it late evening where you are with stars just beginning to pierce through the darkening sky? Or perhaps it's the deep hours of night when the world around you has grown quiet and still. Whatever time it is for you, wherever you are, I'm glad you're here, settling in for this journey through the mysteries of time itself. And if you find yourself drawn into this exploration, if these ideas spark something within you, perhaps you might consider subscribing to join us for more of these gentle voyages into the unknown. But for now, just relax. Let yourself sink deeper into wherever you're resting, and allow these thoughts to wash over you like waves on a distant cosmic shore. You know, we take so much for granted about time. Every morning, or what we call morning, we wake up one day older than we were when we fell asleep. Our memories accumulate behind us like footprints in sand, each one marking a moment that has passed and cannot return. We plan for tomorrow, next week, next year, always moving forward on this great conveyor belt of existence that seems to carry us inexorably from birth toward death, from youth toward age, from not knowing toward knowing, and sometimes, beautifully, from knowing back toward mystery. But what if, just for tonight, we could imagine it all running in reverse? What if the river of time that has carried you to this very moment could somehow turn around and begin flowing backward, carrying you not toward tomorrow, but toward yesterday, not toward old age, but toward youth, not toward endings, but toward beginnings? It's a question that might seem absurd at first, might make you smile at its impossibility. After all, you've never experienced a day that moved from evening to morning, never seen a flower unblooming back into a seed, never watched the sun rise in the west and set in the east, and yet in the vast cosmic dance of particles and forces, in the mathematical equations that describe our universe, in the strange quantum realm where the very small plays by different rules than the world we see, there's nothing, absolutely nothing, that says time must flow in only one direction. The equations work just as beautifully backward as they do forward. The universe, in its fundamental laws, seems almost indifferent to the direction of time's arrow. So tonight, as you lie there in the darkness or perhaps in the soft glow of a bedside light, I invite you to release your grip on the forward flow of time, just for a while. Let your mind drift like a leaf on that backward flowing river, and imagine with me what it might be like if everything you knew about growing older, about cause and effect, about the unstoppable march from past to future, could gently, peacefully reverse itself. Imagine if the you of tomorrow was actually younger than the you of today. Imagine if every sunset was actually a sunrise running backward. If every goodbye was actually a hello that hadn't happened yet. If every ending was secretly a beginning waiting to unfold in reverse. The strange thing about time, the truly mysterious thing that physicists and philosophers have puzzled over for centuries, is that we all know exactly what it feels like, but none of us can really say what it is. You feel time passing right now, don't you? You feel the seconds slipping by as my words flow into your ears, as your breath moves in and out, as your heart beats its steady rhythm. But what exactly is flowing? What exactly is passing? Is time like a river that carries us along? Or are we moving through time like travellers on a road? Or perhaps, and this is where it gets really interesting, perhaps time isn't moving at all. Perhaps it's all there at once, every moment that ever was and ever will be, existing simultaneously in what physicists call the block universe. And what we experience as the flow of time is just our consciousness threading its way through these frozen moments, like a train moving through a landscape that was always there. And if that's true, If all moments exist eternally in this great frozen block of space-time, then why should consciousness only be able to move through it in one direction? Why shouldn't it be possible, somewhere, somehow, for awareness to trace its path backward through the moments, experiencing them in reverse order, living life like a movie played backward, where every frame is the same but the story unfolds in the opposite direction? Think about your own life for a moment, but think about it backward. This morning, or whenever you woke up, imagine if that was actually the end of your day and you were about to experience everything in reverse until you reached yesterday's evening, which would feel like your new morning. You would remember the future but not the past. You would know what's coming but not where you've been. Every meal would begin with feeling full and end with feeling hungry. Every conversation would start with goodbye and end with hello. Every relationship would begin with deep knowledge and intimacy and move toward first meetings and introduction. It sounds disorienting, doesn't it? And yet, if you had always lived this way, if everyone had always lived this way, it would feel completely natural. You wouldn't know any different. The future, what we call the past, would be fixed and known, while the past, what we call the future, would be uncertain and full of surprises. You would age backward, growing younger with each passing day, moving from wisdom toward innocence, from complexity toward simplicity, from knowing toward wondering. Scientists have actually thought deeply about this possibility. In the 1960s, physicist Thomas Gold proposed that there might be regions of the universe where time runs backward relative to our own. These wouldn't be strange or exotic places. They would follow all the same laws of physics we know and love. It's just that what we call the future, they would call the past, and vice versa. If you could somehow meet someone from such a region, though how you would meet when you're moving through time in opposite directions is a puzzle in itself, you would each see the other as living backward. To you, they would be aging in reverse, unwriting letters, unbuilding houses. To them, you would be doing exactly the same thing. The really mind-bending part is that both of you would be right. There would be no objective truth about which direction time really flows. It would be like two people on opposite sides of the earth arguing about which way is up. From each person's perspective, they're standing upright and the other person is upside down, and they're both correct. Time's direction might be just as relative as up and down, just a matter of perspective in the grand cosmic scheme. As you lie there tonight, perhaps you can feel the weight of all your tomorrows pressing forward, the momentum of your life carrying you into the future. But what if you could also feel the gentle pull of all your yesterdays, drawing you back toward your beginning? What if every moment of your life exists eternally, and you could visit them in any order you chose, like walking through rooms in a vast house where every room is a different day, a different year, a different version of you? In quantum mechanics, the bizarre science of the very small, particles actually do move backward through time in a sense. When physicists track the behavior of subatomic particles, they find that the mathematics works perfectly if some particles are moving backward through time. An electron moving backward through time is mathematically identical to its antimatter counterpart, a positron, moving forward through time. This isn't just theoretical. We see these antiparticles all the time in particle accelerators and cosmic ray showers. They're real, they're here, and they might be nothing more than ordinary particles taking the scenic route through time in the opposite direction. What if you're made of particles? Billions, and billions of them, and some of them are moving backward through time right now? What if, at the tiniest level, you're not just moving forward through time but backward as well, different parts of you flowing in different directions like currents in a complex river? Maybe that's why memory feels so strange sometimes, why déjà vu happens, why dreams can feel like prophecy, why sometimes you know things you shouldn't know, remember things that haven't happened yet, or feel the echo of futures that might have been. The philosopher Henri Bergson once wrote that we perceive time like a melody, where each note only makes sense in relation to the notes that came before and the notes that will come after. But what if you could hear the melody backward? Would it still be beautiful? Would it still make sense? Or would it be a completely different song, with its own logic, its own emotional arc, its own way of touching your heart? Imagine if memories worked backward too. Right now, you remember your past, your childhood, your first day of school, your first love, all the moments that have shaped you into who you are. But in a backward-flowing life, you would instead remember your future, your last day, your final words, the way everything ends. You would be born with a full set of memories of a life you haven't lived yet, and as you grow younger, you would gradually forget them, losing the knowledge of what's to come, becoming more and more innocent, more and more free. Would that be terrifying or liberating? To know exactly how your story ends, but to be moving away from that ending with every passing day? To start with all the answers and gradually discover all the questions? To begin with wisdom and experience and slowly trade them for wonder and possibility? There's something deeply peaceful about the idea, isn't there? In our normal, forward-flowing lives, we accumulate worries, responsibilities, regrets. We carry the weight of our past mistakes, our missed opportunities, our roads not taken. But in a backward-flowing life, you would shed these burdens one by one. Every regret would unhappen, every mistake would be undone, every wound would heal not by scarring over, but by never having been inflicted in the first place. Think about learning in reverse. Right now, when you learn something new, it starts as a mystery and gradually becomes knowledge. You struggle, you practice, you fail, you try again, and eventually understanding dawns. But in reverse, you would start with perfect knowledge and gradually release it, like letting go of balloons one by one. You would begin playing the piano like a virtuoso and slowly forget how to play, until one day you would sit at the keys for the first time, not knowing what they do, filled with wonder at the strange and beautiful sounds they make. Every skill you've ever learned would follow this pattern. You would speak fluently and gradually forget words until you were babbling like a baby. You would read complex literature and gradually lose the ability to decipher symbols on a page. You would understand the deep mysteries of the universe and gradually let them go, returning to a state of pure curiosity, pure potential, pure beginning. And relationships. Relationships would be perhaps the strangest and most poignant of all. You would meet someone for the first time already knowing you love them, already carrying years of shared experiences, inside jokes, intimate knowledge. Your first conversation would be laden with history, and over time you would know each other less and less, love each other more simply, more purely, until finally you would pass each other as strangers, not knowing that you had just lost or were about to gain one of the most important people in your life. Children would be born old and wise, arriving with a lifetime of experience, and parents would watch them grow younger, more innocent, more playful, until one day they would simply disappear, returning to wherever souls come from or go to. Is that loss or completion? Is it sad or beautiful? Maybe it's both. Maybe it's neither. Maybe it's just different. Like a story told in a different order, where the meaning comes not from the sequence of events but from the events themselves. The physicist Sean Carroll has suggested that the reason we perceive time as flowing forward is connected to entropy, the tendency of things to move from order to disorder. A sandcastle becomes a pile of sand. An egg breaks and spreads. Heat flows from hot to cold. But in a universe where time ran backward, entropy would decrease. Piles of sand would spontaneously form into sandcastles. Broken eggs would reassemble themselves. Heat would flow from cold to hot. It would be a universe of constant miracles, where complexity emerges from chaos, where broken things heal themselves, where every ending is actually a beginning. But here's the really interesting part. From the perspective of someone living in that backward universe, it wouldn't seem miraculous at all. It would seem perfectly normal, just as our forward universe seems normal to us. They would have their own arrow of time, their own sense of cause and effect, their own way of understanding how one thing leads to another. They would remember their past, our future, and anticipate their future, our past. They would make plans, have hopes, dream dreams, all in the opposite direction from ours. And maybe, just maybe, somewhere in the vast expanse of our universe, or in another universe entirely, there are beings living exactly this way right now. While you're lying here, moving forward through time, growing older with each breath, accumulating memories of the past, they're lying somewhere else, moving backward through time, growing younger with each breath, accumulating memories of the future. You're both real, both valid, both living full and meaningful lives, just in opposite directions. The cosmologist Thomas Gold even suggested that the universe might have a mirror point, a moment of maximum expansion, and that on one side of that point, time flows one way, and on the other side, it flows the opposite way. If this is true, then somewhere, in the far future, or the far past, depending on your perspective, There's another version of our universe where everything runs in reverse. Every star that burns out here is being born there. Every person who dies here is coming to life there. Every goodbye here is a hello there. What would it be like to approach that mirror point, that moment when time turns around? Would you even notice? Or would it be like reaching the equator, an invisible line that you cross without feeling anything different, but suddenly you're in a new hemisphere where water spirals down drains in the opposite direction? Maybe we're approaching that point right now. Maybe the expansion of the universe will eventually slow, stop, and reverse. And when it does, time itself will turn around. Everyone who has ever lived will live again, but backward. Every story will be retold in reverse. Every life will be unlived and then relived. The universe will remember everything it has forgotten and forget everything it has remembered. Or maybe, and this is perhaps the most intriguing possibility of all, time doesn't flow at all. Maybe the sense of flow is just an illusion created by consciousness, and the real truth is that all moments exist simultaneously, eternally, like frames in an infinite film reel. Past, present, and future are all equally real, all happening right now in the eternal now of space-time. You as a baby, you as you are now, you as you will be, all existing at once, all equally real, all equally present in the grand tapestry of existence. If that's true, then asking whether time flows forward or backward is like asking whether a painting is viewed from left to right or right to left. The painting just is, complete and whole, and how you experience it depends on how your consciousness moves through it. Maybe some consciousnesses move forward through time, some move backward, some move sideways, some jump around randomly, and all of these movements are equally valid ways of experiencing the eternal, unchanging whole. As you drift deeper into relaxation, feeling perhaps the gentle pull of sleep beginning to tug at the edges of your consciousness, you might wonder what it would feel like to let go of the forward arrow of time, just for a moment. What if, right now, you could stop pushing toward tomorrow and let yourself drift backward toward yesterday? What if you could feel yourself growing younger with each breath, shedding the weight of years, returning to a state of greater simplicity, greater wonder, greater possibility? In dreams, we often experience time in non-linear ways. We jump from moment to moment without transition. We experience the future as memory and the past as surprise. We meet people who are simultaneously young and old, familiar and strange. We visit places that are both here and there now and then. Dreams might be our consciousness's way of practicing for a different kind of time, a more fluid, more flexible way of moving through the moments of our existence. Some physicists have even suggested that consciousness itself might be the key to time's arrow, that without conscious observers, the universe would exist in a superposition of all possible states, with time flowing both forward and backward simultaneously. It's only when consciousness observes, when we collapse the wave function by looking, by experiencing, by being aware, that time chooses a direction and flows that way. If that's true, then you, right now, in this moment, are helping to determine the direction of time itself. Your awareness, your experience, your observation is part of what makes time flow forward. And if you could somehow shift your consciousness, change the way you observe, alter the angle of your awareness, maybe you could make time flow differently. Maybe you could experience your life in reverse, or sideways, or all at once in a single eternal moment of perfect understanding. The mystics have always said something similar, that linear time is an illusion, that in deep meditation or profound spiritual experience, you can step outside the flow of time and experience the eternal now, where all moments exist simultaneously. They speak of prophetic visions that are really just glimpses of the eternal present, of past life memories that are really just consciousness accessing different points in the timeless whole, of the feeling that you've lived this moment before because in a sense you're living all moments always. Modern physics seems to be converging on a similar view. The block universe of Einstein's relativity, the timeless wave function of quantum mechanics, the holographic principle that suggests all the information in the universe might be encoded on its two-dimensional boundary. All of these point toward a reality where time as we experience it is not fundamental but emergent, not real but apparent, not flowing but fixed. And yet, even knowing this intellectually, we can't help but feel time passing. We can't help but experience the flow from past to future, the accumulation of memories, the anticipation of tomorrow. This feeling is so fundamental to our experience that it's almost impossible to imagine life without it. But tonight, in the quiet space between waking and sleeping, maybe we can loosen our grip on that feeling just a little bit. Maybe we can let ourselves imagine, if only for a moment, what it would be like to flow the other way. Picture yourself tomorrow, not moving toward it, but moving away from it. You already know what tomorrow holds because you've already been there. You remember eating breakfast tomorrow, going about your day, returning to bed tomorrow night. But now you're moving away from all that, backward toward today, toward yesterday, toward all your yesterdays stretching back to your birth and beyond. Every person you'll meet, you've already met. Every experience you'll have, you've already had. Every lesson you'll learn, you've already learned. You're not moving toward the unknown, but away from the known. Not toward death, but away from it. Not toward endings, but away from endings, toward beginnings you've forgotten. Origins you can't quite remember. A source that calls to you from the distant past that is your future. In this backward journey, every day you become a little less worn, a little less tired, a little less burdened by the weight of experience. Your body grows stronger, more flexible, more resilient. Your mind becomes clearer, more open, more capable of wonder. Your heart becomes lighter, less guarded, more ready to love without reservation. The wrinkles on your face smooth out one by one, each line that told a story of laughter or worry gradually disappearing, leaving your skin fresh and new. Your hair returns to its original colour, grows thicker, more lustrous. Your eyes brighten, seeing the world with increasing wonder, as if everything is becoming new again, which in a way it is. You watch your children grow younger, becoming teenagers, then children, then babies, then disappearing back into the mystery from which they came. But this isn't loss, it's completion. They're returning home, going back to the source, completing the circle, and you know, with the certainty of memory, that they were happy, that they lived full lives, that everything turned out exactly as it should. Your parents grow younger too, becoming the vibrant adults you remember from your childhood. Then the young people you never knew, full of dreams and ambitions, then teenagers themselves, then children, then babies, then gone. But again, this isn't loss. It's like watching a flower return to its seed, knowing that the seed contains the whole flower, that nothing is truly lost, only transformed. Work becomes play as responsibilities fall away. You gradually forget the skills you spent years learning, but instead of feeling loss, you feel freedom. Each forgotten skill is a burden lifted, a door closed that allows another to open. You become more creative, more spontaneous, more willing to try things without knowing how they'll turn out. Except you do know how they'll turn out, because you remember the future. You know everything will be okay. Relationships simplify. The complex web of adult friendships with all their history and baggage gradually becomes the simple, pure friendships of youth, where you can become best friends with someone in an afternoon, where every game is the most fun you've ever had, where every day is an adventure. Language itself begins to dissolve. Complex sentences become simple ones. Big words become small words. Abstract concepts become concrete experiences. You stop talking about love and simply feel it. You stop analysing happiness and simply are happy. You stop thinking about meaning and simply live meaningfully. And then one day, or is it the first day, you can no longer speak at all. But this isn't a loss of capability. It's a return to a more fundamental form of communication. You cry when you're sad, laugh when you're happy, reach out when you want comfort. Everything is immediate, authentic, real. There's no gap between feeling and expression, no filter between experience and response. The world becomes bigger as you become smaller. Rooms that seemed normal-sized become vast halls. Furniture becomes climbing structures. Every object becomes a potential toy, a source of wonder, a mystery to explore. You see faces leaning over you, huge and loving, speaking words you don't understand but in tones that convey everything you need to know. You are loved, you're safe, you are home. And then, finally, even this dissolves. The world becomes soft and warm and liquid. Sounds become muffled, distant, rhythmic. You float in perfect comfort, perfect safety, connected to everything, part of everything. You don't know where you end and the universe begins because there is no ending, no beginning, only being. Is this death or birth? Is it ending or beginning? In a universe where time flows backward, these questions lose their meaning. Every ending is a beginning. Every death is a birth. Every goodbye is a hello. The circle completes itself, and in completing begins again. Some physicists have suggested that if the universe is truly symmetric in time, if the laws of physics really work equally well in both directions, then there must be an equal amount of matter moving forward through time and backward through time. For every particle moving from past to future, there's an antiparticle moving from future to past. For every star burning from hydrogen to helium, there's an anti-star burning from helium to hydrogen. For every person living forward, there might be an anti-person living backward. These wouldn't be evil twins or opposite personalities. They would be exactly like us, with the same hopes, dreams, fears, and loves. The only difference would be the direction of their journey through time. They would remember what we anticipate, and anticipate what we remember. They would see causes where we see effects and effects where we see causes, but they would be just as real, just as valid, just as meaningful as we are. Maybe dark matter, that mysterious substance that makes up most of the matter in the universe, but that we can't see or detect directly, is nothing more than ordinary matter moving backward through time. We can't see it because by the time its light reaches us, we've already passed the point where it was emitted. We can only detect its gravitational effects, the way it pulls on ordinary matter, because gravity doesn't care about the direction of time. If this is true, then the universe is far stranger and more wonderful than we ever imagined. Half of everything is moving backward. Half of all stories are being told in reverse. Half of all lives are being unlived. And yet, from each perspective, from each direction, everything makes perfect sense. The universe is like a vast palindrome, reading the same forward and backward, meaningful in both directions. As you lie here tonight, suspended between waking and sleeping, between today and tomorrow, you exist at the intersection of these two flows of time. Part of you moves forward, accumulating memories, growing older, approaching the future. Part of you moves backward, shedding experiences, growing younger, approaching the past. You are both the arrow and the target, both the journey and the destination, both the question and the answer. In the mathematics of relativity, your entire life is already mapped out in space-time, a four-dimensional worm stretching from birth to death, from beginning to end. Every moment of your existence is equally real, equally present in the eternal now of the block universe. The you of 10 years ago is still there, still experiencing that moment, frozen in space-time like a fly in amber. The you of 10 years from now is already there, already experiencing that future moment, waiting for your consciousness to catch up. But consciousness doesn't have to move through this structure in only one direction. In principle, there's nothing stopping awareness from moving backward along your world line, experiencing your life in reverse, or jumping around randomly, experiencing moments out of order, or experiencing all moments simultaneously in a single eternal instant of perfect knowledge. Maybe that's what happens when we die. Maybe death is just consciousness reaching the end of its forward journey and beginning its backward journey. Maybe we live our lives twice, once forward and once backward, once from birth to death and once from death to birth. Maybe that's why death often brings such peace to those who are dying. They know they're not ending but turning around, not leaving but returning, not dying but being born in reverse. Or maybe consciousness can move in both directions simultaneously, and we're always living our lives both forward and backward at the same time. Maybe that's why we sometimes feel like we've been somewhere before, met someone before, lived a moment before. Maybe we have, in the other direction, in the other flow, in the other half of our existence that moves through time like a reflection in a mirror. The past and the future might be more connected than we think. They might be the same thing viewed from different directions. What we call memory might be prophecy moving backward. What we call anticipation might be remembering forward. What we call causation might be correlation viewed from a particular angle in time. Think about how strange causation really is when you examine it closely. We say the past causes the future, but we can never actually see causation happening. All we see is correlation, patterns, regularities. We see one thing followed by another and infer a causal connection. But what if the connection runs both ways? What if the future causes the past just as much as the past causes the future? In quantum mechanics, this kind of backward causation seems to happen all the time. When you measure a particle's spin, you instantly determine the spin of its entangled partner, no matter how far away it is. But experiments have shown that this determination can work backward in time as well. A measurement in the future can determine a state in the past. The future reaches back and shapes history, just as history reaches forward and shapes the future. This isn't just theoretical. Experiments have been done where scientists make a choice about how to measure a particle after it has already passed through a double slit, and that future choice determines whether the particle went through one slit or both slits in the past. The future writes the past. Effect creates cause. The arrow of time becomes a circle. If this is happening at the quantum level, might it be happening at our level too, just in ways too subtle for us to notice? Might your future self be reaching back, influencing your decisions, guiding you toward or away from certain choices? Might the life you've already lived in the forward direction be shaping the life you're living now in the backward direction? That feeling you sometimes get that you're meant to do something, meant to be somewhere, meant to meet someone. Might that be a memory from your future self, your backward living self, who has already done that thing, been to that place, met that person? Might intuition be nothing more than remembering backward? Might déjà vu be the moment when your forward-moving consciousness and your backward-moving consciousness pass each other, experiencing the same moment from opposite directions? Some people report near-death experiences where they see their entire life flash before their eyes, but not in chronological order, all at once as a complete whole, where every moment is simultaneously present. They describe being able to see their life from outside time, understanding how every event connected to every other event, how every choice led to every consequence, how everything fit together in a perfect pattern that only made sense when viewed from outside the flow of time. Maybe they're glimpsing the truth, that our lives are not lines but circles, not journeys but locations, not stories but paintings. We experience them sequentially because that's how consciousness works, but the reality is that they exist all at once, complete and perfect, in the eternal now of space-time. As you settle deeper into the darkness, feeling perhaps the weight of your blanket, the softness of your pillow, the gentle rhythm of your own breathing, let's expand our view beyond the personal, beyond the human, beyond even the Earth itself, and consider your place in the vast cosmic clockwork that surrounds us all. You see, the question of time flowing backward isn't just about you or me or any individual life. It's about the entire universe, this enormous mechanism of stars and galaxies, particles and waves, all dancing to the rhythm of time itself, whatever direction that rhythm might flow. Right now, as you lie there, the Earth is spinning beneath you at about 1,000 miles per hour at the equator, though you don't feel it. It's also orbiting the Sun at roughly 67,000 miles per hour, though again, you feel perfectly still. The Sun itself, along with our entire solar system, is orbiting the center of the Milky Way galaxy at about 500,000 miles per hour, and the Milky Way is hurtling through space toward the Andromeda galaxy at about 300,000 miles per hour. You are, at this very moment, moving through space at incomprehensible speeds in multiple directions simultaneously, and yet you feel at rest. Motion, like time, is relative. What feels still to you is blazing motion to someone watching from another star, and what feels like forward to you might be backward to someone in another part of the cosmos. The Earth has been spinning for about 4.5 billion years, and in all that time it has been slowing down. Days are getting longer, though so gradually you'd never notice. When the Earth was young, a day lasted only about 6 hours. In the distant future, if we project forward, or is it backward, a day might last as long as our current month. The Moon, which causes this slowing through tidal friction, is simultaneously drifting away from us, about 1.5 inches per year. Everything in the cosmos is in constant motion, constant change, and yet from our perspective, the heavens seem eternal and unchanging. But imagine if we could reverse all these cosmic motions. The Moon would spiral inward instead of drifting away. The Earth would spin faster instead of slower. The continents would converge instead of drift apart. The universe itself would contract instead of expand. Would we notice? Would the laws of physics still work? Would life still be possible? The answer, surprisingly, is yes to all three questions. A universe running backward would be just as valid, just as consistent, just as capable of supporting life and consciousness as our forward-running universe. You're made of atoms that were forged in the hearts of stars. The carbon in your body, the oxygen you breathe, the iron in your blood. All of these were created in stellar furnaces billions of years ago, in stars that lived and died before our sun was born. When those ancient stars exploded in supernovae, they scattered these elements across space, where they eventually coalesced into new stars, new planets, and eventually into you. You are literally made of stardust, cosmic debris, the ashes of dead stars. In a very real sense, you are the universe looking back at itself, contemplating itself, wondering about itself. But if time ran backward, this cosmic story would unfold in reverse. Instead of stars forming from clouds of gas, burning brightly, and then exploding to seed space with heavy elements, we would see heavy elements gathering from across space, assembling into stellar corpses which would then come to life, growing younger and smaller, breaking down heavy elements into lighter ones, until finally they would dissolve into clouds of pure hydrogen, the primordial element, the first and simplest atom. Your atoms would follow this reverse journey, leaving your body travelling back across space, gathering in reverse supernovae, being unforged in stellar cores, returning to their primordial state. The cosmic clock that governs all of this is unimaginably vast and slow by human standards. The universe itself is about 13.8 billion years old, or young, depending on your perspective. If we compressed the entire history of the universe into a single year, with the Big Bang occurring at midnight on January 1st, then the Earth wouldn't form until September, life wouldn't appear until sometime in October, and all of human history would occur in the last few seconds before midnight on December 31st. You, your entire life, would be a tiny fraction of a second in this cosmic year. And yet, despite this vast disparity in scales, you are connected to it all. The same physical laws that govern the spinning of galaxies govern the beating of your heart. The same quantum mechanics that describes subatomic particles describes the chemistry of your thoughts. The same relativity that warps space-time around black holes warps space-time around you, though to a much smaller degree. You're not separate from the universe. You're a part of it, a pattern within it, a temporary arrangement of its fundamental constituents. When we look out into space, we're also looking back in time. The light from the sun takes about 8 minutes to reach us, so when you see the sun, if you ever look at it directly, which you shouldn't, you're seeing it as it was 8 minutes ago. The light from the nearest star, Proxima Centauri, takes about 4 years to reach us. The light from the Andromeda Galaxy, our nearest large galactic neighbour, takes about 2.5 million years to reach us. When we look at distant galaxies through powerful telescopes, we're seeing them as they were billions of years ago, when the universe was young. But if time could flow backward, we would be looking into the future instead of the past. The light reaching us from distant galaxies would show us what they will become, not what they were. We would see stars that haven't been born yet, galaxies that haven't formed yet, events that haven't happened yet. The night sky would be a window into tomorrow rather than yesterday, a preview of coming attractions rather than a historical record. The Earth itself would tell a different story in reverse. Mountains would sink into the ground rather than being pushed up. Rivers would flow uphill, gathering water from the sea and depositing it as rain that falls upward into clouds. Erosion would build up features rather than wearing them down. The Grand Canyon would fill in, layer by layer, until it was a flat plain. Volcanoes would suck in lava rather than spewing it out. Earthquakes would gather energy rather than releasing it. Life on Earth would evolve in reverse, from complexity to simplicity. Humans would evolve backward into earlier hominids, then into apes, then into earlier mammals, then into reptiles, then into amphibians, then into fish, then into simple multicellular organisms, then into single cells, then into the chemical soup from which life first emerged, or in this reverse universe, into which life finally dissolves. The tree of life would be pruned back to a single trunk, then to a seed, then to nothing. But here's where it gets really interesting. In our forward time universe, life seems incredibly improbable. The conditions have to be just right. The right temperature, the right chemicals, the right energy sources, the right amount of time. Scientists estimate that the odds of life arising spontaneously from non-living matter are astronomically small. And yet, here we are. Life found a way, against all odds. In a backward time universe, life would seem equally improbable but for the opposite reason. Instead of simple chemicals spontaneously organizing into complex life forms would spontaneously disorganize into simple chemicals. Instead of order emerging from chaos, chaos would emerge from order, and yet it would happen with the same inevitability, the same certainty, following the same laws of physics, just in the opposite direction. The seasons would cycle backward too. Winter would melt into autumn, which would green into summer, which would bud into spring, which would bear into winter again. Leaves would jump from the ground onto trees, turning from brown to green as they rise. Snow would fall upward, gathering into clouds. Flowers would close into buds, then shrink into seeds, then disappear into the soil. Your own daily cycle would reverse. You would wake up tired and go to bed refreshed. You would start the day full and end it hungry. The sun would rise in the west and set in the east. Clocks would run backward, though you wouldn't notice because your biological clock would be running backward too. Morning would feel like morning and evening would feel like evening, even though they would be reversed from our current perspective. The tides would still ebb and flow, pulled by the moon's gravity, but the pattern would be reversed. High tide would become low tide and vice versa. Waves would run backward, gathering water from the beach and carrying it out to sea. Tsunamis would be even stranger. Walls of water that emerge from the land, travel backward across the ocean, and converge at a single point where an underwater earthquake absorbs their energy instead of releasing it. Weather patterns would be particularly bizarre in reverse. Hurricanes would be vast vacuum cleaners, sucking up moisture and energy from large areas and concentrating them into a small, calm center. Tornadoes would rebuild houses instead of destroying them, carefully placing each board and brick exactly where it belongs. Lightning would flow from the ground to the clouds, and thunder would precede it rather than follow it. Rain would fall upward, gathering into droplets as it rises, collecting into clouds that gradually dissipate into clear skies. But remember, if you'd always lived in such a world, none of this would seem strange. It would all seem perfectly natural, perfectly logical. Destruction would seem like construction, and construction would seem like destruction. Decay would seem like growth, and growth would seem like decay. Death would seem like birth, and birth would seem like death. Your entire understanding of cause and effect would be reversed, but it would be just as consistent, just as reliable, just as useful for navigating the world. The fossil record would tell a story of de-evolution, of life becoming simpler and simpler as we dig deeper into the rock, but we wouldn't interpret it that way. We would see it as evolution, just running in the direction we're used to thinking of as backward. The oldest rocks would contain the most complex fossils, and the youngest rocks would contain the simplest. Paleontologists would study how life gradually simplified over millions of years, returning to the sea, returning to single cells, returning to the primordial soup. Astronomy would be the study of the universe's youth rather than its old age. Instead of looking at ancient light from distant galaxies and trying to understand how the universe began, we would be looking at young light and trying to understand how it will end. Or from our perspective, how it began, since ending and beginning would be reversed. The cosmic microwave background radiation, that faint echo of the Big Bang that fills all of space, would be seen as the growing whisper of the Big Crunch, the universe's future collapse into a single point. The Big Bang itself would be the Big Crunch, and the Big Crunch would be the Big Bang. The universe would begin in a state of maximum expansion, with galaxies flying apart and end in a single point of infinite density. Or perhaps it would begin in a single point and end in maximum expansion. It all depends on which direction you call forward and which you call backward. The universe doesn't care about our labels. It just is, existing in all its moments simultaneously, with beginning and ending being human concepts we impose on the eternal whole. Black holes would be particularly interesting in a backward universe. Instead of being cosmic vacuum cleaners that suck in everything that comes too close, they would be cosmic fountains, spewing out matter and energy. Things wouldn't fall into black holes, they would emerge from them. The event horizon wouldn't be a point of no return, but a point of inevitable emergence. And perhaps most strangely, information wouldn't be destroyed in black holes, but created, appearing from nothing, adding to the universe's total store of knowledge. This actually solves one of the biggest puzzles in physics, the black hole information paradox. In our forward time universe, when something falls into a black hole, the information about what it was seems to be destroyed, which violates the principle that information must be conserved. But in a backward time universe, there's no paradox. Information emerges from black holes fully formed, and the mystery is not where it goes, but where it comes from. The paradox is the same, just viewed from the opposite direction. Stars would live their lives in reverse, starting as white dwarfs or neutron stars or black holes, gradually gathering energy and matter, growing larger and cooler, moving backward along the main sequence until they dissipate into clouds of gas. Supernovae would be implosions rather than explosions, gathering light and energy from across space and concentrating it into a single star. The spectacular death of stars would become their spectacular birth, and their quiet birth would become their quiet death. Galaxies would evolve backward too, from complex spirals and ellipticals to simple, irregular shapes to clouds of gas. The large-scale structure of the universe, that vast cosmic web of galaxy clusters and voids, would gradually smooth out, becoming more and more uniform, until the universe was a perfectly smooth sea of hydrogen and helium, with no structure, no variation, no interest. But wait, that's exactly what we think the early universe was like. In the standard Big Bang model, the universe began in a state of almost perfect uniformity, and has been growing more complex and structured ever since. In a backward time universe, it would begin complex and structured and grow more uniform over time. The heat death of the universe, that state of maximum entropy where nothing interesting can happen anymore, would be the beginning rather than the end. The anthropic principle, the observation that the universe seems fine-tuned for life, would take on a different meaning in a backward universe. Instead of asking why the universe started with conditions that would eventually allow life to evolve, we would ask why the universe will end with conditions that allowed life to de-evolve. The fine-tuning would be in the future rather than the past, in the destination rather than the origin. Your place in all of this, as a conscious being capable of observing and understanding the universe, would be just as special and just as mysterious. Consciousness seems to be the universe's way of observing itself, of knowing itself, of wondering about itself. In a backward universe, consciousness would still play this role, but the questions would be different. Instead of wondering where we came from, we would wonder where we're going. Instead of trying to predict the future, we would try to retrodict the past. Instead of learning about the universe's history, we would learn about its destiny. The arrow of time that we experience so strongly, this sense that time flows from past to future, might be nothing more than an artifact of consciousness, a necessary feature of any system capable of forming memories and making predictions. A conscious being in a backward universe would experience their own arrow of time pointing from their past to their future, even though their past is our future and their future is our past. Think about your own memories for a moment. They seem to be records of the past, traces left by events that have already happened. But what if they're actually plans for the future, blueprints for events that are yet to come? What if remembering is actually a form of predicting, and predicting is actually a form of remembering? What if the only difference between memory and anticipation is the direction you're facing in time? In the block universe model of space-time, where all moments exist eternally, your memories and your future are equally real, equally present, equally accessible in principle. The fact that you can access one and not the other is a feature of consciousness, not of the universe itself. The universe contains your entire world line from birth to death, and it doesn't distinguish between past and future. That distinction is something you bring to it, something consciousness imposes on the eternal whole. The earth beneath you right now contains a record of its entire history and its rocks, its fossils, its magnetic field. But it also contains, in a sense, a record of its entire future. The laws of physics that governed its past will govern its future. The patterns that shaped its history will shape its destiny. If we knew the position and momentum of every particle on Earth, we could in principle calculate both its entire past and its entire future. The Earth's story is already written in the configuration of its atoms. We just can't read it yet. The same is true for you. Your body contains a record of your past in your DNA, your scars, your memories. But it also contains, encoded in the same physical structures, your future. Your DNA contains instructions not just for who you are, but for who you will become. Your brain contains not just memories of what has happened, but patterns that will shape what will happen. You're a four-dimensional structure in space-time, and your present moment is just a cross-section of that structure, like a single frame from a movie that extends from your birth to your death. The cosmic clock that measures all of this operates on scales we can barely comprehend. The universe has existed for billions of years, and will likely exist for billions more. Stars will continue to form and die for trillions of years. Black holes will persist for unimaginable eons, slowly evaporating through Hawking radiation. The last black hole won't evaporate until something like 10 to the 100th power years from now, a number so large it's meaningless to human comprehension. And yet, all of this, past, present and future, might exist simultaneously in the eternal now of space-time. The cosmic clock might not be ticking at all. It might be frozen, with all its hands pointing to all times at once. We experience it as ticking because consciousness can only sample one moment at a time, like a scanner reading a barcode, creating the illusion of motion from a static pattern. If you could step outside of time, outside of the cosmic clock, and see your life and the Earth's life and the universe's life all at once, what would you see? Would it look like a vast, static sculpture, beautiful in its complexity but motionless? Or would it look like a living thing, breathing in all directions at once, expanding and contracting simultaneously, being born and dying in the same eternal moment? The Earth from this perspective would be a four-dimensional sphere, spiraling through space-time as it orbits the Sun. Your life would be a four-dimensional worm, weaving through the Earth's world line, intersecting with other human world lines, creating a complex tapestry of relationships and interactions. The entire history of life on Earth would be a vast tree growing in 4 dimensions, branching and rebranching, spreading from a single root to billions of leaves, each leaf a life, each branch a species, the whole thing existing eternally in space-time. From this godlike perspective, the question of whether time flows forward or backward would be meaningless. It would be like asking whether a painting goes from left to right or right to left. The painting just is, complete and whole. And any sense of direction is imposed by the viewer, not inherent in the painting itself. The universe just is, complete and whole, and any sense of time's direction is imposed by consciousness, not inherent in the universe itself. But we are not gods. We are conscious beings embedded in space-time, experiencing it from the inside, one moment at a time. We cannot step outside the cosmic clock to see it whole. We are gears in the clockwork, hands on the dial, tick marks on the face. We are part of time, and time is part of us. We cannot observe it objectively because we are it, experiencing itself subjectively. And perhaps that's the most profound mystery of all, not that time might flow backward, not that the universe might be eternal and unchanging, not that consciousness might create the arrow of time, but that there is something rather than nothing, that the universe exists at all, that you exist to wonder about it. In a forward universe or a backward universe, in flowing time or frozen time, the fact of existence itself is the ultimate mystery, the question behind all questions, the wonder that underlies all wonder. Now, as you sink deeper into the quiet space of near sleep, let's bring our cosmic contemplation back to the intimate, the personal, the deeply human experience of what it would actually feel like to live backward through time. Not the abstract physics of it, not the vast astronomical implications, but the simple, moment-to-moment experience of a life lived in reverse. Close your eyes if they aren't already closed, and let's walk together through a day, a year, a lifetime, all flowing in the opposite direction from everything you've ever known. Imagine waking up, except it's not morning, it's evening, and you're not waking up refreshed, but rather waking up tired, ready for the day to end. The last thing you remember is going to sleep last night, or is it tomorrow night, and now here you are, consciousness returning as the sun sets outside your window. The light is fading rather than growing, orange and pink giving way to deep blue, then darker blue, then black. You feel the weight of a full day's experience that you haven't lived yet, or rather, that you've already lived but are about to unlive. You get out of bed feeling exhausted, your body heavy with the fatigue that normally comes at day's end. But as you move through your evening routine, or is it morning routine, you begin to feel more energetic. Each backward step through your day removes a little tiredness, adds a little vitality. You're not building up fatigue, you're shedding it, returning to the fresh energy of morning that awaits you at day's end. You walk to the bathroom and look in the mirror. The face looking back at you is familiar but somehow different. If you could remember tomorrow, which in this backward life you can, you'd see that you look slightly younger than you did then. Just a day younger, imperceptibly so, but younger nonetheless. That tiny line at the corner of your eye that appeared tomorrow, today it's gone. That slight stiffness in your shoulder that you'll feel tomorrow morning, today you move freely without pain. Brushing your teeth is a strange experience. The toothpaste flows from your mouth back into the tube. The brushing motion cleans in reverse, though you don't notice because this is how it's always been for you. You start with clean teeth and end with the slightly fuzzy feeling that tells you it's time to brush. Except you've just finished unbrushing, and that fuzzy feeling means you're done. Breakfast, or is it dinner, is perhaps the strangest part of your reverse day. You sit down to a full plate, feeling satisfied and full. As you eat in reverse, food travels from your mouth to your fork to your plate, reforming into whole pieces. The feeling of fullness gradually gives way to hunger. By the time your plate is full and untouched, you're ravenous. But this feels normal to you. This is how eating has always worked. You start satisfied and end hungry, the meal removing the discomfort of fullness and replacing it with the anticipation of eating. The food itself tells a story in reverse. That apple you're uneating gradually becomes whole again, its flesh reforming around the core. If you could follow it further back, you'd see it travelling back to the store, back to the truck that delivered it, back to the warehouse, back to the farm, back to the tree where it would shrink from ripe fruit to green fruit to blossom to bud. But you only see this one moment of its reverse journey, this one frame of its backward story. Getting dressed is an act of undressing. You start fully clothed and gradually remove layers, but it doesn't feel like removal. It feels like the natural progression from the complexity of day clothes to the simplicity of night clothes. Each garment you take off is one less decision, one less constraint, one more step toward the freedom of sleep. The workday, if you can call it that when it runs from evening to morning, is a process of undoing. If you're a writer, words disappear from the page, sentences unform, ideas return to the inchoate void from which they came. If you're a builder, structures come apart, materials return to their raw state, the completed becomes the potential. If you're a teacher, knowledge flows from your students back to you, their understanding diminishes, their questions become unasked. But here's the beautiful paradox. This doesn't feel like destruction. It feels like creation, just creation of a different sort. The writer feels the satisfaction of seeing a blank page emerge from the chaos of words, pure potential from the constraint of actual. The builder feels the joy of revealing the raw materials hidden within the finished structure. The teacher feels the pleasure of gathering knowledge back, of seeing confusion resolve not into understanding, but into the blessed ignorance that precedes the need to understand. Conversations run backward, but they still convey meaning. Goodbye comes at the beginning, hello at the end. Questions are answered before they're asked. Conclusions precede arguments. Punchlines come before setups, and yet, somehow, it all makes sense. The emotional arc of the conversation is reversed but still present. You start with understanding and connection, and gradually work your way back to introduction and uncertainty. Every conversation is a gradual forgetting, a slow release of intimacy, a return to the beautiful strangeness that makes meeting someone for the first time so full of potential. Think about a conversation with someone you love running in reverse. You begin with, I love you, already knowing, already feeling the full weight of that love. Then gradually, word by backward word, you work your way back through all the conversations that built that love. The deep talks become lighter, the intimate whispers become normal speech, the familiar becomes formal, until finally at the very end you're back to, hello, nice to meet you. Except now that first meeting is charged with all the love you're about to unfeel, all the experiences you're about to unhave, all the moments you're about to unlive. The commute home, or to work depending on your perspective, is a journey backward through space. If you drive, you're in reverse the entire time, watching the road behind you through the windshield, seeing where you've been rather than where you're going. Traffic lights go from green to yellow to red, giving you permission to stop after you've already been stopped. Other cars move backward too, all of you participating in this elaborate reverse dance, somehow never colliding, somehow always ending up exactly where you need to be. If you walk backward, your feet finding their way without you having to look. You've walked this path so many times that your body knows every crack in the sidewalk, every uneven spot, every turn. Except you're not learning the path through repetition. You're unlearning it, each journey making it slightly less familiar, until eventually it will be a route you've never walked before. The weather changes around you as the day progresses backward. Morning rain dries up into afternoon clouds, which dissipate into morning sunshine. Puddles shrink and disappear, their water rising invisibly into the air. Wet clothes dry themselves. Umbrellas close before the rain stops, anticipating the dryness that's coming. The backward day has its own rhythm, its own logic, its own form of beauty. Lunch is another exercise in reverse consumption. You start with the satisfied feeling of a good meal and gradually work your way back to hunger. The sandwich reassembles itself bite by bite. The coffee in your mug grows from empty to full, from cold to hot. Conversations with colleagues run backward, starting with conclusions and working back to small talk. The lunch hour begins with everyone dispersing and ends with everyone gathering, a gradual coming together that feels like community forming rather than dissolving. The afternoon, or morning, in your backward day is when you feel most energetic. The fatigue of the morning, which is evening, has been steadily lifting, and now you're approaching the peak energy of the day's beginning, which is its end. Tasks that seemed difficult earlier now seem easy. Problems that were complex become simple. The fog of tiredness clears to reveal the sharp clarity of a rested mind. If you have children, watching them live their backward day is both heartbreaking and beautiful. They come home from school knowing less than when they left. Their homework undoes itself, problems returning to their unsolved state. Their drawings go from complete to sketch to blank paper, and yet they seem happy. The frustration of not understanding gives way to the peace of not needing to understand. The burden of knowledge lifts, leaving them lighter, freer, more able to play. Playing itself is different in reverse. Games end with everyone scattered and begin with everyone together. Scores decrease to 0. Winners become uncertain. The excitement of competition gives way to the calm of not yet having begun. Toys break down from complex structures to simple pieces. Elaborate fantasies simplify into basic narratives, then into wordless play, then into simple holding and touching. Dinner, or breakfast, with the family is a ritual of reverse nourishment. You gather around a table of empty plates and gradually fill them with food from your mouths. Conversations flow backward, but the emotional content remains. Laughter still punctuates the meal, even if the punchlines come before the setups. The feeling of family, of belonging, of being part of something larger than yourself, persists regardless of time's direction. As the day continues backward toward its beginning, the sun rises in the west, painting the sky with the colours of dawn in reverse. The world lightens gradually, shadows shrinking, colours becoming more vivid. Birds sing their morning songs, though for you these are evening songs, lullabies calling you toward the sleep that awaits at day's beginning. The evening routine, which is your morning routine, is a process of adding layers, complexity, preparation. You go from the simplicity of pyjamas to the complexity of day clothes, from the peace of being ready for bed to the anticipation of a day about to be unlived. Your thoughts, which have been becoming clearer and simpler all day, now begin to quiet, preparing for the unconsciousness of sleep. Finally, you lie down in bed, feeling the fresh energy of morning, the readiness for a new day, even though you're about to sleep. As consciousness fades, you don't wonder what tomorrow will bring because you already know. You remember it clearly. Instead, you wonder about yesterday, that mystery that awaits you on the other side of sleep, that unknown country you're about to explore by unravelling the day you've just unlived. Now let's expand our view from a single day to a full year lived in reverse. Imagine starting on New Year's Eve, with fireworks already in the sky, champagne already drunk, resolutions already broken. The celebration winds down to anticipation to normal life, and slowly, day by backward day, you work your way through the year toward January 1st. Winter melts backward into autumn. Snow rises from the ground to the sky. Ice forms on puddles that were clear water. Trees that were bare gradually grow leaves, but the leaves are brown and red and gold, and as they attach to the branches they turn green. The world moves from the death of winter through the dying of autumn to the full life of summer. Your birthday happens in reverse. You start the day older and end it younger. The cake appears with candles already blown out, and as you breathe in, the flames appear. People take back their presents, unwrapping them, returning them to stores. The song Happy Birthday is sung backward, ending with everyone gathering rather than dispersing. You don't gain a year. You lose one, returning to a younger state, one step further from death, one step closer to birth. Holidays run their course in reverse. Christmas presents unwrap themselves and return to stores. Decorations come down and go back in boxes. The tree undecorates, then travels back to the tree lot, then to the forest, where it shrinks back into the ground. Halloween costumes are taken off rather than put on. Fireworks fall from the sky and pack themselves back into their tubes. Each celebration is an uncelebration, but somehow still joyful, still meaningful, still marking the passage of time. Relationships evolve backward. That couple you know who got divorced? You watch them grow back together, their anger softening to disappointment, their disappointment to frustration, their frustration to mild annoyance, their annoyance to acceptance, their acceptance to love. Their wedding happens in reverse, vows taken back, rings removed, but the joy is still there, just joy of a different kind, the joy of returning to potential rather than actualizing it. If you're in a relationship yourself, you and your partner grow less familiar with each day. Inside jokes lose their meaning and become regular conversations. Pet names revert to real names. The deep knowledge of each other's habits and preferences fades to uncertainty and discovery. Every day you know each other a little less, love each other a little more simply, until eventually you're back to that electric first moment, when everything was possible and nothing was certain. Pregnancies run in reverse. Babies disappear into wombs. Bellies shrink. Morning sickness goes from bad to better to gone. The anticipation of meeting someone new is replaced by the mystery of who that someone was. Baby showers return gifts. Nurseries undecorate. The profound transformation of becoming a parent reverses into the simplicity of being just yourself. Children grow younger with each passing day. Your teenager becomes a child. Your child becomes a toddler. Your toddler becomes a baby. Your baby disappears into the mystery from which all life comes. But this isn't loss. It's completion. Each phase of childhood is fully lived, fully experienced, just in reverse order. The wisdom of adolescence gives way to the innocence of childhood. The mobility of walking gives way to the intimacy of being carried. The complexity of language gives way to the perfection of a cry that says everything necessary. School years run backward. Students start knowing everything and gradually forget, but forgetting feels like freedom, not loss. Final exams come first, then regular tests, then quizzes, then homework, then the first day of school, which is really the last. That bittersweet moment when summer vacation begins, and all knowledge is released back into the universe, leaving only the pure potential of an empty mind ready to be unfilled. Seasons cycle backward but maintain their own logic. Spring's growth becomes winter's. Dormancy becomes autumn's harvest, becomes summer's fullness, becomes spring's growth again. The circle completes itself regardless of which direction you travel it. Gardens grow in reverse, from harvest to seed, but the satisfaction of growing food remains. Flowers bloom backward, from full flower to bud to shoot, to seed to soil, but their beauty persists at every stage. Work projects complete themselves before they begin. You start with the satisfaction of a job well done, and gradually work your way back to the excitement of a new idea. Paychecks are returned, but so is the time and effort that earned them. Promotions become demotions, but each step down the ladder is a step toward freedom, toward less responsibility, toward the simple joy of just doing rather than managing. Vacations are journeys from relaxation to anticipation. You start on the beach, fully rested, and gradually work your way back to the stress that made the vacation necessary. The plane flight home is really the flight there. The unpacking is really the packing. The goodbye to normal life is really the hello. But the restoration still happens, just in a different direction. Instead of rest fixing stress, the absence of stress makes rest unnecessary. Illnesses heal before they begin. You start with health, move through recovery, experience the illness at its worst, then watch it approach from the future, knowing it's coming but not yet feeling its effects. The relief of healing precedes the discomfort of sickness. Medicine is untaken after cure, returning to the bottle returning to the pharmacy returning it to the manufacturer breaking it down into component chemicals, the chemicals returning to the earth. Injuries repair themselves. Broken bones unknit, cuts seal. Bruises fade from purple to yellow to nothing. The pain diminishes before it arrives. The accident that caused the injury unhappens. The fall becomes an ascent. The collision becomes a near miss. The mistake becomes unmade. Your body grows more whole, more perfect, more resilient with each passing day. Now let's expand even further and imagine an entire lifetime lived in reverse. You begin at the end, on your deathbed, surrounded by loved ones, fully aware of everything that has happened in your life, or rather, everything that will happen. You know every joy that awaits you, every sorrow you'll unfeel, every person you'll unmeet, every experience you'll unhave. Death itself is not an ending, but a beginning. The last breath becomes the first. The stopping of the heart becomes its starting. The closing of eyes becomes their opening. You don't die. You're born into reverse life, emerging from death into the fullness of old age, carrying all the wisdom, all the memories, all the experiences that you're about to release, one by one, as you grow younger. Old age is a process of becoming stronger, more capable, more independent. Every day you can do something you couldn't do yesterday, or rather you can undo something you did tomorrow. Your wrinkles smooth out, your hair darkens and thickens, your eyes brighten, your hearing sharpens. The aches and pains of age disappear one by one, leaving you feeling progressively better, progressively younger, progressively more alive. Retirement becomes unretirement. You leave the golf course and return to the office. You trade leisure for purpose, rest for activity, reflection for action. The gold watch is returned, the farewell party unhappens, and you're back in the thick of your career, except now you're moving toward its beginning rather than its end. Your career itself is a journey from expertise to ignorance, from mastery to learning, from knowing to wondering. You start as the wise elder, full of knowledge and experience, and gradually become the eager young employee, full of questions and enthusiasm. Every skill you unlearn is a burden lifted. Every piece of knowledge you forget is space cleared for wonder. Middle age is the process of losing the complexities of later life and returning to the simplicities of youth. Your children grow younger and eventually disappear back into the potential of unconceived life. Your marriage simplifies from deep partnership to young love, to first attraction to not knowing each other at all. Your home goes from lived in to new, to unbuilt, to an empty lot, to a forest or field. Young adulthood is the unbecoming of an adult and the return to adolescence. You leave your apartment and move back in with your parents. You quit your first job before you're hired. You ungraduate from college, forgetting everything you learned, returning to the blissful ignorance of not knowing what you don't know. The weight of adult responsibilities lifts, replaced by the freedom of youth. College runs backward from graduation to freshman orientation. You start knowing everything and gradually forget, but each forgotten fact is replaced by wonder. Each unlearned skill is replaced by potential. You move from the specialized knowledge of your major to the general education of core requirements, to the pure potential of an undeclared major, to the excitement of arrival on campus for the first time. High school reverses from senior to freshman. You go from driving to being driven, from dating to not noticing the opposite sex, from complex social hierarchies to simple friendships. Your body ungrows from adult size to child size. Your voice uncracks. Your wisdom teeth disappear back into your gums. Puberty reverses itself in a process that feels like relief rather than loss. The complications of adult sexuality simplifying back to the clarity of childhood. Childhood itself is a journey from complexity to simplicity. You unlearn to read, and books become beautiful objects with mysterious marks. You unlearn to write, and pencils become sticks for drawing rather than tools for language. You unlearn to walk, and the world becomes a place to be carried through rather than navigated independently. You unlearn to talk, and communication becomes pure emotion rather than filtered through words. Early childhood is particularly beautiful in reverse. You go from the child who plays independently to the toddler who needs constant attention to the baby who is never alone. Your world shrinks from the entire house to a single room, to a crib, to a womb. But this shrinking doesn't feel like limitation. It feels like increasing safety, increasing warmth, increasing connection. The first years of life, or the last depending on your perspective, are a gradual return to the source. You lose language but gain the ability to communicate through pure need and pure satisfaction. You lose mobility but gain the constant comfort of being held. You lose independence but gain the perfect security of complete dependence. Every day you become smaller, simpler, more essential. Infancy reverses toward birth. You shrink from baby to newborn to fetus. Your awareness dims from the brightness of the world to the darkness of the womb. Sounds become muffled, light becomes darkness, cold and heat become the perfect temperature of amniotic fluid. You're returning to the beginning, to the source, to the mystery from which all life emerges. Birth itself, or unbirth, is not traumatic but peaceful. You don't emerge screaming into a cold, bright world. You return quietly to a warm, dark one. The umbilical cord reattaches, becoming your lifeline rather than something to be cut. You become part of another body rather than separate from it. The boundary between self and other dissolves. And then finally you reach the true beginning or ending conception itself. That moment when two becomes one becomes nothing. The fertilized egg divides in reverse, becoming two separate cells. Then those cells return to their sources, travelling back through fallopian tubes and vas deferens, returning to ovaries and testes, becoming potential rather than actual. But even this isn't really the end, or beginning. The atoms that made you continue their journey backward, they return to the food your parents ate, to the plants and animals that became that food, to the soil and air and water that nourished those plants and animals, to the stars that created those elements, to the Big Bang itself, or in this reverse universe, the Big Crunch. That final moment when everything returns to a single point of infinite density and infinite potential. Your lifetime, lived backward, is not a journey from birth to death, but from death to birth, from complexity to simplicity, from knowing to mystery. Every day you become younger, more innocent, more full of potential. Every experience you unhave creates space for wonder. Every person you unmeet becomes a stranger you've yet to encounter. Every word you unlearn returns language to its primal state of pure sound and fury, signifying everything and nothing. And through it all, consciousness persists, experiencing this reverse journey not as loss but as a different kind of gain. You don't mourn the experiences you're unhaving because you remember them perfectly. They're in your future after all. You don't fear the simplicity you're approaching because you know it contains all the complexity you've left behind. You don't resist the return to non-existence because you know that non-existence contains the potential for all existence. Living backward would mean that every ending is a beginning, every goodbye is a hello, every death is a birth. It would mean that life is not a journey from nothing to nothing again, but a journey from everything to everything again. It would mean that meaning doesn't depend on direction, that purpose doesn't require progress, that beauty exists in both the building up and the breaking down. As you lie there, perhaps feeling sleep beginning to claim you, you might wonder what it would be like to wake up tomorrow and find that time has reversed, that you're living your life backward. Would you notice? Would anyone notice? Or would it feel perfectly natural, perfectly normal, the way things have always been and always will be? Maybe you are living backward right now, and what you call memory is actually prophecy. What you call the past is actually the future. What you call growing older is actually growing younger. Maybe everyone is living backward, and forward is just a convention we've agreed upon, a way of making sense of the directionless flow of existence. Or maybe, and this is perhaps the strangest possibility of all, you're living both forward and backward simultaneously, your consciousness splitting at each moment, one stream flowing toward the future, one toward the past, each experiencing life fully but in opposite directions. Maybe that's why you sometimes feel like you've lived a moment before, why certain places feel familiar even when you've never been there, why some people feel like old friends the moment you meet them. The beauty of living backward is not that it's better than living forward, but that it reveals the arbitrariness of direction itself. Life is meaningful not because it goes from A to B, but because it exists at all. Experience is valuable not because it accumulates, but because it happens. Love matters not because it grows, but because it is. In a backward life, You would still love, still learn, still grow, just in the opposite direction. You would still have hopes and dreams. They would just be memories instead of anticipations. You would still have relationships. They would just begin with depth and end with potential instead of the other way around. You would still have a story. It would just be told in reverse, like a movie played backward, where every frame is the same but the meaning is transformed. The night deepens around you now, and perhaps you feel yourself balanced on that delicate edge between waking and sleeping, between consciousness and dreams, between knowing and unknowing. It's the perfect state in which to contemplate the science of time itself, not with the harsh brightness of full alertness, but with the gentle glow of a mind beginning to release its grip on certainty. Let's explore together, in the softest possible way, why time seems to have a direction at all, why the universe appears to prefer one arrow over another, and what physics whispers to us about the possibility of that arrow pointing the other way. Scientists call it time's arrow, this mysterious preference the universe seems to have for moving from past to future rather than future to past. But when they look at the fundamental equations that govern reality, the mathematics that describes how particles move, how forces interact, how energy transforms, they find something peculiar and beautiful. Almost all of these equations work perfectly well in both directions. They're time-symmetric, treating past and future as interchangeable, like a palindrome that reads the same forward and backward. Take Newton's laws of motion, those elegant rules that govern how objects move through space. If you film a billiard ball rolling across a table and then play that film backward, both versions obey Newton's laws perfectly. The backward rolling ball isn't violating any fundamental physics, it's following the same rules, just in the opposite temporal direction. The equations don't care which way time flows, they work equally well in both directions. The same is true for Einstein's relativity, that beautiful theory that revealed space and time to be aspects of a single fabric called space-time. In relativity, time is just another dimension, like the 3 dimensions of space. And just as you can move forward or backward in space, the equation suggests you should be able to move forward or backward in time. There's nothing in the mathematics that privileges one direction over the other. Even quantum mechanics, that strange realm where particles behave like waves and observation creates reality, is largely time-symmetric. The Schrödinger equation, which governs how quantum systems evolve, works just as well backward as forward. A quantum particle moving backward through time is mathematically identical to its antiparticle moving forward through time. The universe at its most fundamental level seems utterly indifferent to time's direction. So why then does time seem to flow so definitively from past to future in our experience? Why do we remember yesterday but not tomorrow? Why does cause precede effect? Why do eggs break but never unbreak? The answer, scientists believe, lies not in the fundamental laws but in something more subtle, more statistical, more emergent: entropy. Entropy is often described as disorder, but that's not quite right. It's better thought of as the number of ways something can be arranged. A broken egg has high entropy because there are countless ways to arrange the molecules of a broken egg. The yolk can spread in any pattern. The shell can fragment into any number of pieces. An unbroken egg has low entropy because there's essentially only one way to arrange it: shell intact, yolk contained, everything in its proper place. The second law of thermodynamics states that entropy always increases in a closed system. Things move from order to disorder, from low entropy to high entropy, from fewer possible arrangements to more possible arrangements. This is why eggs break but don't unbreak, why coffee and cream mix but don't unmix, why rooms get messy but don't spontaneously clean themselves. It's not that the reverse processes are impossible, they're just incredibly, astronomically improbable. Imagine you have a deck of cards arranged in perfect order, all the spades together, all the hearts together, everything in sequence from ace to king. This is a low entropy state because there's only one way to achieve this exact arrangement. Now shuffle the deck. After shuffling, the cards will almost certainly be in some random order. This is a high entropy state because there are trillions upon trillions of possible random arrangements. If you keep shuffling, will the deck ever return to its original perfect order? In principle, yes. There's nothing in the laws of physics preventing it, but in practice, even if you shuffled once per second for the entire age of the universe, you'd almost certainly never see that perfect order again. The probability is so small it might as well be zero. This is why entropy increases, not because it must, but because increase is overwhelmingly more probable than decrease. But here's where it gets interesting and strange and wonderful. The second law of thermodynamics doesn't actually specify a direction for time. It just says that entropy increases in the direction we call future. If time ran backward, entropy would still increase. It would just increase toward what we call the past. The law would work exactly the same way, just pointed in the opposite direction. Ludwig Boltzmann, the 19th century physicist who first understood entropy in terms of probability, realized this paradox. If the laws of physics are time-symmetric and entropy is just about probability, then why should the universe have started in a low-entropy state? Why was the early universe so ordered, so special, so improbable? This is called the past hypothesis, and it's one of the deepest mysteries in physics. The universe began, as best we can tell, in an incredibly low-entropy state. The Big Bang wasn't chaos, it was order, perfect smoothness, maximum simplicity. All the matter and energy in the universe was compressed into a tiny space, uniform and undifferentiated. This is the lowest entropy the universe has ever had, and everything since has been a gradual increase toward disorder, a slow slide toward equilibrium, a patient journey toward maximum entropy. But why? Why did the universe start this way? If high entropy is more probable, why didn't the universe begin in a high entropy state? And if it had to begin in a low entropy state, why not an even lower one? These questions don't have answers, at least not yet. The low entropy beginning of the universe is simply a brute fact, an initial condition, a mystery written into the fabric of reality. Some physicists have suggested that our universe is just one of many in a vast multiverse, and we happen to live in one that started with low entropy, because that's the only kind where complex structures like stars and planets and people can form. In universes that began with high entropy, nothing interesting would ever happen. They would be eternal, featureless voids, without structure, without change, without observers to wonder about them. Others have proposed that the universe didn't begin with the Big Bang at all, that there was a before, perhaps an infinite past in which entropy was even lower. Sean Carroll and Jennifer Chen have suggested that the universe might be eternal and symmetric, with entropy increasing in both directions from a minimum point. On one side of this minimum, our side, entropy increases toward what we call the future. On the other side, entropy increases toward what we call the past. Both sides would see themselves as moving from past to future, from low entropy to high entropy, following the same arrow of time. This would mean that somewhere perhaps infinitely far in what we call the past or future, there's a mirror universe where time runs backward relative to ours. The beings in that universe, if any exist, would remember what we call the future and anticipate what we call the past. They would see entropy increasing in their future, which is our past. Their arrow of time would point in the opposite direction from ours, but they would experience it exactly as we experience ours. The really mind-bending part is that from a God's eye view outside both universes, there would be no objective truth about which direction is really forward and which is really backward. Both universes would be equally valid, equally real, following exactly the same laws of physics, just with opposite arrows of time. It would be like the way there's no objective up in space. Every direction is up from somewhere and down from somewhere else. But entropy isn't the only arrow of time. There are others, and mysteriously they all point in the same direction. There's the cosmological arrow. The universe is expanding, not contracting. There's the radiative arrow. Light spreads outward from sources, not inward toward them. There's the causal arrow. Causes precede effects. There's the psychological arrow. We remember the past, not the future. And there's the quantum arrow. Wave functions collapse from superposition to definite states, not the reverse. Why do all these arrows align? Why don't some point forward and others backward? This is another deep mystery. It might be that they're all consequences of the thermodynamic arrow, all different manifestations of entropy's increase. Or it might be that they're independent but somehow synchronized by the initial conditions of the universe or by some deeper principle we don't yet understand. The psychological arrow is particularly puzzling. Why do we remember the past but not the future? Memory seems to be about storing information, and information is related to entropy. To remember something is to have a low entropy record of it in your brain. But creating such a record increases entropy elsewhere. so the total entropy of the universe still increases. We can only remember the past because the past had lower entropy than the present, giving us something to create records of. If time ran backward, would we remember the future instead? Almost certainly yes. Our brains would still create memories, or rather, destroy them from our current perspective. But these memories would be of what we now call the future. We would know what's going to happen, but not what has happened. We would anticipate the past and remember the future. The psychological arrow would reverse along with the thermodynamic arrow. This raises a profound question. Is the arrow of time objective or subjective? Is it a feature of the universe or a feature of consciousness? Some physicists, like Carlo Rovelli, argue that time's arrow is perspective dependent, that it only exists for subsystems of the universe, not for the universe as a whole. From inside the system, time has a clear direction. From outside, it doesn't. Think of it this way. Imagine you're inside a sealed room with no windows. Inside the room, you can tell which direction is up because gravity pulls things down. But if the room were floating in deep space, far from any gravitational source, there would be no objective up or down. The direction you call up would be arbitrary, just a convention based on the room's orientation. Time's arrow might be similar, clear and obvious from inside the universe, but arbitrary or non-existent from outside. The quantum mechanical arrow of time is perhaps the strangest of all. In quantum mechanics, systems exist in superposition, multiple states simultaneously, until they are observed, at which point they collapse into a single definite state. This collapse appears to be irreversible. You can't uncollapse a wave function, can't return a system to superposition once it's been measured. This gives time a direction at the quantum level. But some interpretations of quantum mechanics deny that collapse really happens. In the many worlds interpretation, every possible outcome of a quantum measurement happens in parallel universes. The wave function never collapses, it just branches, with each branch experiencing a different outcome. From inside a branch, it looks like collapse has occurred, but from outside, all possibilities remain real. If the many worlds interpretation is correct, then the quantum arrow of time might be an illusion, too, just like entropy. All possible futures and pasts exist simultaneously in the quantum multiverse, and what we experience as the flow of time is just our consciousness tracing one particular path through this vast landscape of possibilities. Hugh Everett, who first proposed the many worlds interpretation, suggested that quantum mechanics might be completely time-symmetric, with the apparent arrow of time emerging only from our perspective as observers embedded in the wave function. We see time flow from past to future because that's the direction in which our branch of the wave function increases in entropy, but other branches might experience time differently. There's even an interpretation called the two-state vector formalism, developed by Yakir Aharonov and others, in which quantum systems are described by two wave functions, one evolving forward from the past, another evolving backward from the future. The present is where these two wave functions meet, where past and future come together to create the now. In this view, the future influences the present just as much as the past does. Experiments in quantum mechanics have revealed something called retrocausality, the apparent ability of future events to influence past events. In delayed choice experiments, a decision made about how to measure a particle can retroactively determine the particle's history. It's as if the particle knows what measurement will be performed on it and adjusts its past behavior accordingly. This doesn't mean we can send messages to the past or change history in any practical way. The effects are subtle, statistical, visible only in carefully controlled quantum experiments, but they suggest that at the fundamental level, causation might not flow only from past to future. The future might reach back and influence the past, creating a kind of temporal symmetry that our macroscopic experience obscures. Some physicists have proposed that the universe might be fundamentally atemporal, that time itself might be emergent rather than fundamental. In this view, the universe exists as a static four-dimensional block, and time is just a way that consciousness carves up this block into moments. The flow of time, the arrow of time, even time itself might be illusions created by the way we process information. Julian Barber, a physicist who has spent decades developing timeless theories of the universe, suggests that what we call time is really just change, and what we call the flow of time is really just the fact that the universe contains a sequence of configurations that our consciousness experiences in order. Each moment exists eternally in what he calls Platonia, a vast landscape of possible configurations, and time is just the path consciousness takes through this landscape. If this is true, then the question of whether time flows forward or backward becomes meaningless. There is no flow, only existence. Past, present, and future are all equally real, all existing simultaneously in the eternal now of the block universe. We experience them sequentially because that's how consciousness works, but the sequence could in principle run in either direction or no direction at all. The holographic principle, one of the most profound insights of modern physics, suggests that all the information in a volume of space can be encoded on its boundary, like a hologram. If the universe is holographic, then everything that happens inside it, including the flow of time, might be encoded on its two-dimensional boundary, where time might not exist at all or might exist in a completely different form. Some theories of quantum gravity, attempting to unify general relativity with quantum mechanics, suggest that space-time itself might be emergent, arising from something more fundamental that doesn't have the properties we associate with space or time. In loop quantum gravity, space-time is made of discrete loops at the Planck scale. In string theory, it emerges from the vibrations of one-dimensional strings. In both cases, time as we know it might not exist at the fundamental level. The Wheeler-DeWitt equation, sometimes called the equation of the universe, describes the quantum state of the entire universe. Remarkably, this equation contains no time parameter. It describes a timeless, eternal universe, where nothing happens, nothing changes, nothing flows. Time, in this view, is not fundamental but emergent, arising from the way subsystems of the universe become entangled with each other. This connects back to entropy and the arrow of time. Perhaps time's arrow exists not because the universe has a preferred direction, but because we, as subsystems of the universe, can only experience it from inside, where entropy gradients create the illusion of flow. The universe as a whole might be timeless, eternal, unchanging, with all moments existing simultaneously in a vast frozen now. The black hole information paradox provides another window into the nature of time. When something falls into a black hole, from the outside perspective it appears to slow down and freeze at the event horizon, never quite crossing it. From the falling object's perspective, it passes through the horizon normally. Both perspectives are valid according to relativity, but they seem incompatible. How can something both cross and not cross the horizon? The answer might be that time itself works differently in different regions of space-time. Near a black hole, time becomes plastic, malleable, almost negotiable. What counts as past and future, what counts as cause and effect, might depend on where you are and how you're moving. The arrow of time might not be universal but local, different for different observers in different situations. Leonard Susskind and Gerard 't Hooft have proposed that information falling into a black hole is both inside and outside simultaneously, a phenomenon called black hole complementarity. This only makes sense if time itself is more flexible than we usually imagine, if the same event can happen and not happen depending on your perspective, if the arrow of time can point in different directions for different observers. Recent discoveries in cosmology have added new mysteries to the question of time's arrow. Dark energy, the mysterious force causing the universe's expansion to accelerate, seems to violate the principle that entropy always increases. As the universe expands and cools, you'd expect it to become more disordered, but dark energy maintains a constant density, a kind of order that persists despite expansion. Some cosmologists have suggested that dark energy might be related to time's arrow in ways we don't yet understand. Perhaps the accelerating expansion of the universe is what creates time's arrow, or perhaps time's arrow is what drives the acceleration. The connection between cosmology and thermodynamics, between the very large and the statistical, remains one of the deepest puzzles in physics. The anthropic principle offers another perspective on time's arrow. We observe entropy increasing because we are entropy-increasing systems ourselves. We can only exist in regions of the universe where entropy is increasing, because that's what allows complex structures like us to form and persist. In regions where entropy is decreasing, if any such regions exist, there could be no observers, no consciousness, no one to notice that time runs backward. This might mean that consciousness itself is intimately connected to time's arrow. We don't just observe entropy increasing, we are entropy increase. Our thoughts, our metabolism, Our very existence depends on and contributes to the rise of entropy. We are time's arrow made manifest, walking, talking expressions of the second law of thermodynamics. But if consciousness is tied to entropy increase, what happens when the universe reaches maximum entropy, the heat death where nothing more can happen? Does time stop? Does it reverse? Does the universe reset somehow, beginning a new cycle with low entropy? These questions touch on the ultimate fate of the universe, the final chapter of time's story. Some theories suggest the universe is cyclic, going through endless cycles of expansion and contraction, with entropy resetting at each bounce. Others suggest that quantum fluctuations might occasionally produce low entropy regions, even in a high entropy universe, seeds from which new universes might grow. Still, others propose that the universe might tunnel quantum mechanically to a new state, restarting the clock of cosmic time. Roger Penrose has proposed something called conformal cyclic cosmology, in which the infinite future of one universe becomes the Big Bang of the next. In the far future, when all matter has decayed and only photons remain, the universe loses all sense of scale and time, becoming indistinguishable from the hot, dense state of a Big Bang. The end becomes the beginning, time curves back on itself, and the arrow of time traces an eternal circle. As you drift closer to sleep, feeling perhaps the pull of dreams beginning to tug at your consciousness, consider this. The science of time's arrow reveals not certainty but mystery, not answers but deeper questions. Every investigation into why time flows from past to future uncovers new puzzles, new paradoxes, new possibilities. The universe, it seems, guards the secret of time jealously, revealing it only in glimpses, fragments, and contradictions. Perhaps that's as it should be. Perhaps the mystery of time is what gives life its poignancy, its beauty, its meaning. If we knew for certain why time flows as it does, if we could prove definitively that it must flow this way and no other, something essential might be lost. The possibility that time could flow backward, that entropy could decrease, that the future could influence the past. These possibilities, however remote, keep the universe open, keep reality flexible, keep existence miraculous. The night deepens further now, and perhaps you can feel yourself floating in that strange space between waking and sleeping, where the boundaries of the possible begin to soften and blur. Let's turn our gaze upward, to the vast cosmos above us, and imagine what it would be like if not just you, not just the Earth, but the entire universe were moving backward through time. Picture the night sky as a vast cinema screen, and someone has just pressed the rewind button on the greatest movie ever made, the story of everything that exists. Right now, if you could see through your ceiling and up into the night sky, you would see stars burning brilliantly, fusing hydrogen into helium in their cores, radiating light and heat into the cold darkness of space. But in our reversed universe, these same stars would be doing something far stranger and more wonderful. They would be gathering light from the vast emptiness around them, pulling photons from the darkness, absorbing energy rather than radiating it. They would be unburning, taking helium and breaking it back down into hydrogen, growing younger and smaller and cooler with each passing moment. The light from these reverse-burning stars wouldn't spread outward in expanding spheres as it does in our universe. Instead, it would converge inward, photons travelling from the depths of space toward the stellar surfaces, arriving in perfect coordination to be absorbed. Imagine standing on a planet orbiting such a star. The sky wouldn't be illuminated by starlight spreading outward. Instead, darkness would flow inward toward the star, and the star would drink in this darkness, converting it back into the potential energy of unburned fuel. Our own sun, that faithful star that has warmed the Earth for billions of years, would be on a different journey entirely. Instead of being middle-aged, about halfway through its life cycle, it would be growing younger. The helium in its core would be unfusing back into hydrogen. The energy that has been warming our planet would be flowing backward, from the Earth to the Sun, from the Sun to its core, where it would be stored as potential energy in the growing reserves of hydrogen fuel. The Sun would be shrinking very gradually, becoming slightly smaller, slightly cooler, slightly less massive as it returns the energy it borrowed from its hydrogen fuel. The sunspots that appear and disappear on its surface in 11-year cycles would still cycle, but backward, with the magnetic field reversing in the opposite sequence. Solar flares would be not eruptions but implosions, with massive amounts of energy and matter falling back into the sun rather than exploding outward. The solar wind, that stream of charged particles that flows constantly from the sun, would reverse its flow. Instead of pushing outward against the interstellar medium, creating the heliosphere that protects our solar system from cosmic rays, it would be pulling inward, drawing material from interstellar space back toward the sun. The aurora borealis and aurora australis, those beautiful northern and southern lights, would still dance across Earth's polar skies, but they would be caused by particles flowing from the Earth back to the sun rather than the other way around. Think about what this means for the light that reaches us from the stars. Right now, when you look at the North Star, you're seeing light that left that star about 433 years ago. You're literally looking into the past. But in a reversed universe, you would be looking into the future. The light reaching your eyes would be light that the star will absorb 433 years from now. Every star in the night sky would be a window not into history but into destiny. The constellations would still wheel across the sky, but their motion would be reversed. Orion would rise in the west and set in the east. The Big Dipper would pour backward, filling rather than emptying. The zodiac would process in the opposite direction, with the sun moving from Pisces to Aquarius to Capricorn, rather than the other way around. Astrologers would have to completely reimagine their craft, reading the future and the past positions of planets rather than the past in future positions. But the constellations themselves would be changing too, just backward from how they change in our universe. Stars that are currently drifting apart would be drifting together. The constellation patterns that have been slowly distorting over millennia would be slowly returning to earlier configurations. If you could watch for thousands of years, you would see the constellations becoming more and more like they were in ancient times, when humans first named them and told stories about them. The Milky Way, our home galaxy, that river of light that stretches across the night sky, would be telling its story in reverse. Instead of spiral arms winding tighter as the galaxy rotates, they would be unwinding. Stars that are currently forming in stellar nurseries would be dissolving back into clouds of gas and dust. The supermassive black hole at the galaxy's center, instead of occasionally swallowing stars that venture too close, would be spitting them out, whole and unharmed, sending them on trajectories that would carry them safely away. Galaxies throughout the universe would be growing younger, less evolved, more pristine. The massive elliptical galaxies that formed from galactic collisions would be separating back into the spiral galaxies that collided to form them. These cosmic car crashes would run in reverse, with the damaged galaxies backing away from each other, their distorted shapes returning to normal, their disrupted star formation patterns resuming their original rhythms. The Andromeda Galaxy, which is currently hurtling toward us at about 110 kilometers per second, and will collide with the Milky Way in about 4.5 billion years, would instead be moving away from us. The future collision that astronomers predict would never happen. Instead, Andromeda would have been closer to us in the past and would be getting farther away with each passing moment. The two galaxies would be like dancers who have just finished a pas de deux and are now backing away from each other, returning to their separate corners of the cosmic dance floor. When we look at distant galaxies through our most powerful telescopes, like the Hubble Space Telescope or the James Webb Space Telescope, we see them as they were billions of years ago, when the universe was young. In a reversed universe, these telescopes would be showing us the future of these galaxies, what they will become billions of years from now. The young, blue, actively star-forming galaxies we see at great distances would be the future state of galaxies, not their past. The old red, quiet galaxies nearby would be what galaxies used to be like, not what they've become. The James Webb Space Telescope, launched in 2021, has been revealing the universe's earliest moments, showing us galaxies that formed just a few 100 million years after the Big Bang. In a reversed universe, it would be showing us the universe's final moments, galaxies in their last stages before dissolving back into the primordial gas from which they came. Every deep field image would be not a baby picture but a prophecy of ending. Supernovae, those spectacular stellar explosions that can briefly outshine entire galaxies, would be even more remarkable in reverse. Instead of a star suddenly brightening and then gradually fading, we would see a region of space gradually brightening as light converges from all directions, reaching a brilliant peak and then suddenly disappearing as all that light and energy is absorbed into a newly reformed star. The heavy elements forged in the supernovas would unfuse back into lighter elements. Iron would become silicon and sulfur, which would become oxygen and carbon, which would become helium and hydrogen. Type Ia supernovae, which astronomers use as standard candles to measure cosmic distances, would still be standard candles, but they would tell a different story. Instead of white dwarf stars accumulating matter from companion stars until they explode, we would see explosions condensing into white dwarf stars, which would then slowly feed matter back to their companions. The cosmic distance ladder that astronomers have painstakingly built would still work, but it would measure distances to future events rather than past ones. Neutron stars, those incredibly dense stellar corpses where a teaspoon of matter weighs as much as Mount Everest, would be coming back to life. They would be gathering energy and matter, expanding, cooling, their incredible density decreasing as they return to being normal stars. The pulsars among them, which spin rapidly and emit regular pulses of radiation like cosmic lighthouses, would be spinning backward, their periods gradually lengthening as they grow younger. Black holes, those regions of space where gravity is so strong that nothing can escape, would become white holes, regions where gravity is so strong that nothing can enter. Instead of being cosmic vacuum cleaners, sucking in everything that comes too close, they would be cosmic fountains, spewing out matter and energy. The event horizon wouldn't be a point of no return, but a point of inevitable emergence. Imagine watching a star fall into a black hole in reverse. In our universe, as something approaches a black hole, it speeds up, heats up, and emits intense radiation before disappearing beyond the event horizon. In reverse, we would see radiation converging on a point near the black hole, condensing into matter, which would then emerge from the event horizon and fly away, slowing down and cooling as it escapes the black hole's gravitational pull. The accretion disks around black holes, those swirling maelstroms of superheated matter spiraling toward doom, would be spinning in reverse, with matter spiraling outward rather than inward. The intense jets of matter and energy that some black holes shoot out from their poles would instead be vast cosmic vacuum cleaners, pulling matter and energy in from thousands of light years away and feeding it to the black hole, which would then somehow convert it back into normal matter and release it gently from the event horizon. Hawking radiation, the theoretical process by which black holes slowly evaporate, would run in reverse. Instead of black holes gradually shrinking as they emit particles, they would be gradually growing as they absorb particles from the quantum vacuum. The smaller the black hole, the faster it would grow, with tiny primordial black holes inflating rapidly, while supermassive black holes grow more sedately. The cosmic microwave background radiation, that faint afterglow of the Big Bang that fills all of space, would be converging rather than spreading. Instead of cooling and redshifting as the universe expands, it would be heating and blue shifting as the universe contracts. The tiny fluctuations in this radiation that seeded the formation of galaxies would be smoothing out, with the universe becoming more and more uniform as we travel backward toward the Big Bang, or in this case toward what we might call the Big Crunch. Dark matter, that mysterious invisible substance that makes up about 85% of the matter in the universe, would still be there in our reversed universe, still invisible, still mysterious. But its effects would be reversed. Instead of helping to pull galaxies together, it might be helping to push them apart. Or rather, it would still be pulling them together. But since time is reversed, coming together would look like moving apart. Dark energy, that even more mysterious force that's causing the universe's expansion to accelerate, would be causing the universe's contraction to accelerate. The universe would be shrinking faster and faster, with galaxies rushing toward each other rather than away. The cosmic web of galaxy clusters and voids would be tightening, with the voids shrinking and the clusters growing denser. The universe itself would be on a journey from cold and empty to hot and dense. The heat death that cosmologists predict for our universe's far future would be its beginning in a reversed universe. It would start in a state of maximum entropy, with all energy spread evenly throughout space, and gradually concentrate that energy, lowering entropy as it contracts toward a big crunch. But here's where things get really strange. If the universe is contracting in a reversed universe, and if we measure distances by the light travel time between objects, then distant objects would appear to be getting closer rather than farther away. The cosmic horizon, the maximum distance from which light has had time to reach us, would be shrinking rather than expanding. The observable universe would be getting smaller, with new galaxies disappearing beyond the horizon rather than appearing within it. space missions in this reversed universe would tell different stories. The Voyager probes, launched in 1977 and now heading out into interstellar space, would be returning home. They would be getting closer to Earth with each passing day, pulled back by reverse trajectories through the outer planets. The golden records they carry, meant to tell alien civilizations about Earth, would be messages from the future rather than the past. The Pioneer anomaly, the mysterious extra deceleration, observed in the Pioneer 10 and 11 spacecraft, would be an acceleration in the reversed universe. The spacecraft would be speeding up unexpectedly as they approached the solar system, drawn by some force we don't understand, or pushed from their reversed perspective. When we send radio signals into space hoping to contact alien civilizations, we would actually be receiving signals from space and somehow converting them back into the intention to communicate. SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, would be working in reverse, taking detected signals and returning them to the cosmic silence from which they came. Meteorites would rise from the Earth and return to space. Impact craters would heal themselves, with the Earth's surface rising up and ejecting the meteorites that caused them. The Chicxulub impact that killed the dinosaurs would be reversed, with the debris falling back together, forming into an asteroid, and flying away from Earth, leaving the dinosaurs to evolve backward into earlier forms. Comets would be even stranger in reverse. Instead of approaching the sun, heating up, and developing their characteristic tails, they would be gathering their tails back into themselves, cooling down and retreating to the outer solar system. The beautiful cometry displays that have awed humans throughout history would be processes of collection rather than dispersal, with the comet gathering its scattered material back together. The zodiacal light, that faint glow visible in the sky just after sunset or before sunrise, caused by sunlight reflecting off dust particles in the solar system, would still be visible, but the dust would be converging rather than dispersing. Over millions of years, this dust would gather itself back together, forming into the asteroids and comets from which it came. Planetary formation would run in reverse. Planets would break apart into planetesimals, which would break apart into dust and gas, which would disperse into the protoplanetary disk from which they formed. The Earth itself would be disassembling, its layers unmixing, its continents unforming, its oceans evaporating into space. The Moon would be spiraling closer, eventually reaching the Roche limit and breaking apart, its pieces raining back down onto Earth before the whole mass returns to the giant impact that formed it. The night sky in this reversed universe would be a constant light show, but a strange one. Instead of meteors streaking across the sky as they burn up in the atmosphere, we would see dark streaks as meteors form from the atmosphere and leap into space. Instead of stars twinkling as their light is distorted by Earth's atmosphere, they would be anti-twinkling, their light becoming more steady as it approaches the star. Auroras would flow in reverse, with the colourful curtains of light drawing together and disappearing as charged particles flow from Earth's atmosphere back toward the sun. Lightning would strike from the ground to the clouds, with the thunder coming before the flash. Rainbows would appear before the rain, as water droplets in the air gather light and convert it back into white sunlight. The phases of the moon would cycle backward, from new moon to waning crescent to third quarter, to waning gibbous to full moon to waxing gibbous to first quarter, to waxing crescent and back to new. Eclipses would still occur, but they would feel different psychologically. A solar eclipse would begin with totality and end with the sun fully visible, a gradual revelation rather than a gradual concealment. If there are other civilizations out there among the stars, they too would be living their histories in reverse in our reversed universe. Their radio signals would be drawing back into their transmitters. Their rockets would be landing rather than launching. Their civilizations would be simplifying rather than complexifying, returning from spacefaring to planet-bound to pre-technological. But would they experience it that way? Or would they, like us in this thought experiment, experience their own time as moving forward, seeing us as the ones living backward? Perhaps every civilization, every conscious being, every observer in the universe experiences their own time as flowing from past to future, regardless of which direction that flow actually points in the grand scheme of things. The Fermi paradox, the question of why, if the universe is full of life, we haven't detected any signs of it, might have a different solution in a reversed universe. Instead of civilizations expanding outward and eventually filling the galaxy, they would be contracting inward, becoming less detectable over time. The Great Silence wouldn't be because nobody's out there, but because everyone is in the process of returning to their homeworlds, pulling in their transmissions, dismantling their megastructures. As you lie there, perhaps feeling the weight of sleep beginning to settle over you like a warm blanket, consider the night sky above you, even if you can't see it through your ceiling. Every star you could see is on its own journey through time, whether forward or backward. Every photon of starlight is either spreading outward or converging inward. Every galaxy is either evolving or devolving, every planet either forming or unforming, every atom either fusing or unfusing. The universe is a vast machine, a cosmic clockwork of unimaginable complexity and beauty, and whether that clock runs forward or backward, whether time flows from past to future or future to past, the machinery itself remains magnificent. The laws of physics that govern it all work equally well in either direction. The mathematics that describes it remains elegant and true regardless of time's arrow. In a reversed universe, we would still look up at the night sky with wonder. We would still trace patterns in the stars and tell stories about them. We would still dream of travelling to distant worlds, even if those travels would be returns rather than departures. We would still search for meaning in the cosmos, still ask the big questions, still marvel at the beauty and mystery of it all. As the night grows deeper still, and perhaps you feel yourself balanced on that delicate threshold between the waking world and the world of dreams, let's contemplate one of the most beautiful and mysterious aspects of our universe, symmetry. The cosmos, you see, seems to have a deep love affair with symmetry, with balance, with mirror images and reflections, and hidden within these symmetries might be the key to understanding whether somewhere, somehow, time truly could flow backward, not just as a thought experiment, but as a real, physical phenomenon happening right now in regions of space and time we cannot directly observe. Physicists have discovered that the universe operates according to certain fundamental symmetries, elegant principles that say certain things must remain the same even when other things change. These symmetries are like the rules of a cosmic game, constraints that shape everything that can happen, everything that does happen, everything that has ever happened or ever will happen. And among these symmetries there are hints, tantalizing, mysterious hints, that time's forward flow might not be as absolute as our daily experience suggests. There's a beautiful theorem in physics called CPT symmetry. The C stands for charge conjugation, flipping all positive charges to negative and vice versa. The P stands for parity, flipping everything as if in a mirror, making left become right and right become left. The T stands for time reversal, making time flow backward instead of forward. The theorem states that if you apply all three transformations together, if you flip charges, flip space, and flip time, the laws of physics remain exactly the same. What this means is almost too strange to contemplate. It means that somewhere there could be a region of the universe where all particles are antiparticles, where everything is mirror reversed, and where time flows backward, and the physics in that region would be identical to the physics here. It wouldn't be approximately the same or similar, it would be exactly, precisely, mathematically identical. That mirror universe would be just as valid, just as real, just as possible as our own. Imagine for a moment that such a region exists. In that mirror realm, what we call electrons would be positrons, what we call matter would be antimatter, what we call left would be right, and what we call future would be past. Beings in that realm, if any exist, would see their time as flowing forward, from their past to their future, even though their future is our past and their past is our future. They would remember what we anticipate and anticipate what we remember. The discovery of CPT symmetry was one of the most profound insights in 20th century physics. It tells us that the universe has a kind of perfect balance, a deep symmetry that connects matter with antimatter, space with its mirror image, and forward time with backward time. It's as if the universe is looking at itself in a complex three-dimensional mirror, and the reflection is just as real as the original. But here's where it gets even more interesting. While CPT symmetry taken as a whole is preserved, the individual symmetries can be broken. We've observed violations of C symmetry. The universe does seem to prefer matter over antimatter, which is why we exist at all. We've observed violations of P symmetry. Certain particle interactions do have a handedness, a preference for left or right. And if C and P can be violated individually, then to preserve CP-T symmetry overall, T-symmetry must be violated too. And indeed, physicists have observed T-symmetry violation in certain rare particle decays. Neutral kaons, exotic particles produced in high-energy collisions, decay in ways that show a slight preference for one time direction over another. It's a tiny effect, barely detectable, but it's real. Time, at least in these specific quantum processes, does have a preferred direction. The universe can tell the difference between forward and backward. But this violation of T-symmetry doesn't mean that backward time is impossible. It just means that certain processes would look slightly different when time reversed. The vast majority of physics, all of classical mechanics, most of quantum mechanics, all of electromagnetism, most of general relativity, respects T-symmetry perfectly. A universe running backward would be almost identical to one running forward, with only tiny, subtle differences in rare particle interactions. Some physicists have suggested that the Big Bang might have created not one universe, but two. One running forward in time, one running backward, perfectly balanced, perfectly symmetric. From a God's eye view outside both universes, they would look like mirror images extending in opposite directions from their common origin. Each would see its own arrow of time as pointing from past to future. Each would see entropy increasing. Each would see causes preceding effects. They would be like two trees growing from the same seed, one growing upward, one growing downward, each equally real, equally valid. This two-headed time hypothesis, proposed by physicists like Julian Barber, Tim Kozlowski, and Flavio Mercati, suggests that the low entropy of the Big Bang isn't a mystery needing explanation. It's simply the natural middle point between two arrows of time pointing in opposite directions. The Big Bang isn't the beginning of time, but the pivot point where time changes direction, like the crest of a wave where upward motion becomes downward motion. In this model, if you could somehow travel back before the Big Bang, you wouldn't find nothing. You'd find another universe evolving backward from your perspective, forward from its own. The beings in that universe, if any exist, would see you as living backward. You would be each other's time-reversed mirror images, each seeing the other as violating causality, each seeing the other as aging in reverse. The idea becomes even more intriguing when we consider quantum mechanics. In the quantum world, particles can be described mathematically as moving backward through time. Richard Feynman showed that an antiparticle, like a positron, behaves exactly like an electron moving backward, through time. The mathematics is identical. This isn't just a computational trick, it might be telling us something profound about the nature of reality. Every time a particle and antiparticle annihilate each other, producing pure energy, we could equally well describe it as a single particle changing direction in time. The particle moves forward until it reaches the annihilation point, then reverses direction and moves backward as an antiparticle. From this perspective, there might be far fewer particles in the universe than we think, maybe even just one, zigzagging back and forth through time, appearing as countless different particles at different moments. John Wheeler, the physicist who coined the term black hole, once suggested to Feynman that maybe all electrons are the same electron, just travelling forward and backward through time so many times that it appears to be billions upon billions of different electrons. It's a wild idea, probably wrong, but it illustrates how deeply time reversal is woven into the fabric of quantum mechanics. The quantum Zeno effect provides another window into time's strange behaviour at the quantum level. If you observe a quantum system frequently enough, you can prevent it from evolving. You can essentially freeze time for that system. It's as if the universe has a pause button that works only when you're watching closely enough. And if you can pause time, maybe you can reverse it too, at least for small quantum systems. Indeed, physicists have successfully reversed time for small quantum systems in laboratory experiments. They've made quantum states evolve backward, returning to earlier configurations, undoing the effects of entropy. These time reversals only work for tiny systems and brief moments, but they demonstrate that backward time isn't just theoretically possible, it's practically achievable, at least in limited circumstances. The holographic principle adds another layer to this mystery. This principle suggests that all the information in a volume of space can be encoded on its boundary, like a hologram. If our universe is holographic, then our three-dimensional space and one-dimensional time might be projections of something simpler, living on a two-dimensional boundary where time might not exist at all, or might exist in multiple directions simultaneously. In this holographic view, what we experience as the flow of time might be like the experience of watching a movie. The movie itself, the film reel, exists as a static object. All frames exist simultaneously, but when we watch it, we experience it sequentially, one frame after another, creating the illusion of motion and change. The universe might be similar, a static hologram that consciousness experiences sequentially, creating the illusion of time's flow. String theory, one of our best candidates for a theory of quantum gravity, suggests that the universe has more dimensions than the 4 we experience, 3 of space and 1 of time. In some versions of string theory, there are multiple time dimensions. If these extra time dimensions exist, time could flow in multiple directions simultaneously. What we experience as the single arrow of time might be just one component of a more complex temporal structure. Imagine a 2-dimensional time, where instead of just past and future, you also have something like left time and right time, directions in time perpendicular to the normal flow. Beings could move through such a temporal plane in spirals or loops or figure eights. They could experience multiple timelines simultaneously, or jump between different temporal trajectories. The possibilities become dizzying. The many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics suggests another kind of symmetry. Every quantum event splits the universe into multiple branches, one for each possible outcome. If this is true, then for every branch where time flows forward, there might be branches where it flows backward, sideways, or not at all. All possible temporal directions might be realized somewhere in the vast quantum multiverse. These parallel branches might occasionally interact, creating what we perceive as quantum interference effects. When we see an electron go through 2 slits simultaneously in the famous double-slit experiment, we might be seeing the interaction between branches where the electron takes different paths, or even branches where time flows differently, where cause and effect are scrambled in ways we can barely imagine. Wormholes, if they exist, could connect regions of space-time where time flows in opposite directions. You could enter one mouth of a wormhole in a region where time flows forward and emerge from the other mouth in a region where time flows backward. From your perspective, you would continue aging normally, experiencing time as always flowing from your past to your future, but you would find yourself in a universe evolving in the opposite direction from the one you left. The inhabitants of that backward region wouldn't see you as a normal visitor. They would see you as a bizarre being aging in reverse, speaking in reverse, thinking in reverse. Your attempts to communicate would be futile. Your words would sound like gibberish played backward. Your writing would appear to erase itself. Your gestures would seem to undo themselves. You would be a temporal alien, incomprehensible and probably terrifying. Black holes might be gateways to time-reversed regions. Roger Penrose has suggested that the singularities inside black holes might be connected to the singularity of the Big Bang, creating closed time-like curves where past and future meet. If you could survive the journey through a black hole, a big if, you might emerge in a region where time flows backward, where you would observe the universe uncontracting, stars unburning, civilizations unevolving. The cosmic censorship hypothesis suggests that such naked singularities, singularities not, hidden behind event horizons, cannot exist in our universe. But this might be because they would violate causality so severely that the universe itself prevents them from forming. The universe might be protecting its temporal integrity, keeping forward time and backward time regions safely separated. But perhaps this separation isn't absolute. Perhaps there are thin places where the barrier between temporal directions becomes permeable. Perhaps déjà vu is a glimpse through this barrier. Perhaps prophetic dreams are memories from our time-reversed doubles. Perhaps the feeling that deceased loved ones are still somehow present is because in the time-reversed region, they haven't died yet. They're still alive, still thinking of us, still sending love across the temporal divide. Quantum entanglement might be another bridge between temporal realms. When 2 particles are entangled, they remain connected no matter how far apart they are in space. But what if they can also be separated in time, or even in time's direction? What if one particle moves forward through time while its entangled partner moves backward? They would still be connected, still influence each other, but across a temporal mirror that reverses everything. This could explain some of the strangest features of entanglement. The instantaneous correlation between entangled particles, which seems to violate the speed of light limit, might not be instantaneous at all. It might be that one particle sends a signal backward in time to the moment of entanglement, then forward in time to the other particle. The correlation would seem instantaneous to us because we can only observe the forward time portions of the process. The arrow of time might not be a single arrow at all, but a whole quiver of arrows pointing in different directions. There might be the thermodynamic arrow, entropy increase, the cosmological arrow, universal expansion, the causal arrow, cause before effect, the psychological arrow, memory of the past, the quantum arrow, wave function collapse, and others we haven't discovered yet. Usually these arrows align, all pointing in the same direction. But perhaps there are regions where they point in different directions, where entropy decreases while the universe expands, where effects precede causes while memory still works normally. Such regions would be strange beyond imagining. You might remember events that, from a thermodynamic perspective, haven't happened yet. You might cause things that have already occurred. You might age backward while experiencing time forward, or age forward while experiencing time backward. The normal rules of existence would be scrambled, creating a reality that would seem like madness to us, but might have its own internal logic, its own form of consistency. The anthropic principle might explain why we don't observe these time-reversed regions directly. We can only exist in regions where time's various arrows align in a way that permits the formation of complex structures like stars, planets, and life. In regions where the arrows point in conflicting directions, matter might not be able to organize itself into anything stable enough to support observers. We see time flowing uniformly forward because that's the only kind of temporal environment where beings like us can exist. But perhaps we do observe these regions just indirectly. Dark matter and dark energy, which together make up 95% of the universe, but which we can't directly detect, might be ordinary matter and energy in time-reversed regions. We can't see them because their light is travelling backward in time, away from us rather than toward us. We can only detect their gravitational effects because gravity, being a curvature of space-time itself, doesn't care about time's direction. This would solve many cosmological mysteries. The missing antimatter that should have been created in equal amounts with matter at the Big Bang might be in the time-reversed regions. The impossibly old stars that sometimes seem older than the universe itself might be younger stars in backward time regions. The cosmic voids that seem too empty might be full of backward time galaxies we can't see. As you drift closer to sleep, feeling perhaps the boundary between waking and dreaming beginning to dissolve, consider that you might be surrounded by invisible time-reversed copies of everything. For every atom in your body moving forward through time, there might be an anti-atom somewhere moving backward. For every thought you think, there might be an anti-thought being unthought in the mirror realm. For every breath you take, there might be an anti-breath being untaken. These mirror realms wouldn't be far away in space. They would be right here, right now, occupying the same space but moving through time in the opposite direction. You could be passing through your time-reversed double at this very moment, two ships passing in the temporal night, unable to perceive each other, unable to interact except through the weak whisper of gravity. The universe might be far stranger, far more symmetric, far more beautiful than we imagine. It might be a vast crystalline structure in space-time, perfectly balanced, with every forward matched by a backward, every up by a down, every left by a right, every matter by antimatter, every universe by an anti-universe. And consciousness somehow traces one particular path through this crystal, experiencing it as a flow, a journey, a story with beginning, middle, and end. But from outside consciousness, from the God's eye view that physics aspires to, there might be no flow at all, just existence. All the paths through the crystal might be equally real, equally valid. The forward paths and the backward paths, the sideways paths and the diagonal paths, the loops and the spirals and the figure eights, all of them might be there in the eternal structure of space-time, waiting to be experienced, waiting to be lived, waiting to tell their stories. Now, as the night reaches its deepest hour and you float in that ethereal space between consciousness and dreams, let us turn from the vast mechanics of the cosmos to something far more intimate, far more personal, the human heart and mind experiencing a universe where time flows backward. What would memory mean when you remember the future? What would love feel like when every relationship begins with its deepest intimacy and ends with strangers passing? What would give life meaning when every achievement is gradually undone, every creation unmade, every legacy erased before it was built. Close your eyes and imagine waking up tomorrow with all your memories intact, but now they are memories of what hasn't happened yet. You remember your death, peaceful, surrounded by loved ones whose faces you know intimately but haven't met yet. You remember your old age, your middle years, your youth stretching out before you like a promise. You remember your childhood, that destination you're travelling toward, that innocence you'll eventually achieve. These aren't prophecies or premonitions, they're memories as clear and certain as your current memories of yesterday. In this backward-flowing life, memory itself would be the strangest thing of all. Right now, you form memories by encoding experiences, storing them in the neural pathways of your brain, creating a record of what has been. But in a backward universe, you would be destroying memories, removing experiences from your neural pathways, erasing the record of what will be. Every day, you would wake up with fewer memories of the future, more uncertainty about what's to come, greater mystery about your destiny. But here's the beautiful paradox. This loss of memory wouldn't feel like loss at all. It would feel like discovery. Every forgotten detail of your future would be replaced by the immediacy of present experience. You wouldn't mourn the memories you're losing because you wouldn't remember having them. Instead, you would feel the constant freshness of a life being revealed moment by moment, surprise by surprise. Think about what this means for relationships, for love, for human connection. Right now, when you meet someone new, there's a dance of discovery. You learn their name, their story, their dreams. You discover what makes them laugh, what makes them cry, what makes them uniquely themselves. Slowly, carefully, like archaeologists excavating something precious, you uncover the depths of another human being. In a backward universe, you would begin with complete knowledge and move toward mystery. Your first conversation with your life partner would be your last. You would already know everything about them, already share decades of memories, already have weathered every storm and celebrated every joy together. Your love would be complete, fully realized, as deep as it could ever be. And then, conversation by conversation, day by day, you would know them less. But this wouldn't be a tragedy. It would be a different kind of romance entirely. Every day, your partner would become more mysterious, more unknown, more full of potential. The comfortable familiarity of old love would give way to the electric uncertainty of new attraction. The deep roots of shared experience would lift one by one until you were floating free in the weightless space of possibility. Imagine saying "I love you" for the first time, except it's actually the last time, and you both know that tomorrow you'll love each other slightly less, know each other slightly less, until eventually you'll pass on the street without recognition. There would be a poignancy to it, a bittersweet beauty, like watching a sunset that you know is actually a sunrise in reverse. Children would present the most profound emotional journey in a backward life. You would begin knowing them as adults, fully formed, independent, with their own lives and thoughts and dreams. Then you would watch them become younger, more dependent, more innocent. Your relationship would evolve from friendship between equals to the protective love of parent for child, to the anticipatory love of expecting parents, to the abstract love of possibility. The day your child disappears back into non-existence wouldn't be a day of loss, but a day of completion. You would have shepherded them all the way back to the mystery from which they came. Every parent's job is to prepare their children to leave. In a backward universe, the job would be to prepare them to arrive, to return to the source, to complete the circle. Think about what this means for the stories we tell ourselves about our lives. Right now, we construct narratives that move from beginning to middle to end, from problem to struggle to resolution. We see our lives as journeys of growth, development, achievement. We start ignorant and gain wisdom. We start weak and gain strength. We start alone and build connections. In a backward universe, the narrative would be inverted but no less meaningful. We would start wise and gain innocence. We would start strong and gain vulnerability. We would start connected and gain solitude. It would be a story not of building but of releasing, not of accumulation but of simplification, not of climbing a mountain but of descending into a valley, and finding that the valley is just as beautiful as the peak, just in a different way. Education would be particularly strange and wonderful. You would start your career as a professor, full of knowledge, respected in your field, and gradually work your way back to being a student. then a child learning to read, then a baby learning to speak, then an infant learning to see. Every day you would know less, but every day you would wonder more. The burden of knowledge would lift, replaced by the lightness of curiosity. Imagine unwriting your dissertation, word by word, watching your complex arguments simplify into basic observations, then into questions, then into wordless wonder. Imagine unlearning mathematics, watching equations dissolve into numbers, numbers into counting, counting into the pure apprehension of quantity without symbols. Every step backward would be a step toward a more direct, more immediate experience of reality. Art would flow in reverse, from completion to conception. A painter would start with a finished masterpiece and gradually remove paint, stroke by stroke, until the canvas was blank and white and full of potential. A musician would begin with a complex symphony and gradually simplify it, movement by movement, until it was a single note, then silence, then the anticipation of sound. A writer would begin with a finished novel and gradually erase it, word by word, until there was only the blank page and the infinite possibility of what might be written. But the artist wouldn't experience this as destruction. They would experience it as a different kind of creation, the creation of space, of potential, of the void from which all art emerges. Every subtraction would be an addition to possibility. Every erasure would be an opening. The blank canvas at the end wouldn't be empty, but full of every painting that could ever be painted. Memory itself would be an art form in a backward universe. Since you remember the future but not the past, every day would bring new mysteries about where you've been, what you've done, who you've been. You would have to reconstruct your past from evidence, from the stories others tell you, from the scars on your body and the objects in your home. Your past would be a detective story you're constantly trying to solve. Photographs would be especially poignant. You would see yourself in situations you don't remember, with people you don't recognize, in places you don't recall visiting. Every photograph would be a message from your forgotten past, a clue to the person you've been. As you grow younger, the person in the photographs would grow older, until eventually you're looking at pictures of an old person you'll never become, living a life you'll never remember. Grief would be transformed in a backward universe. Instead of losing someone and gradually healing, you would start healed and gradually approach the loss. The sharp pain of fresh grief would be in your future, not your past. But knowing it's coming wouldn't make it worse, it might make it better. You would have time to prepare, to appreciate, to make peace. And you would know that after the grief comes the joy of having them in your life, even if you won't remember the grief once the joy arrives. Death itself, or birth, from the backward perspective, wouldn't be feared but anticipated as a return home. You would spend your life growing younger, stronger, more innocent, preparing for the ultimate innocence of non-existence. The approach to death would be like preparing for a journey to a place you've never been, but that feels familiar, like you're being called, home by a voice you recognize but can't quite place. Language would evolve backward in your life. You would begin with a full vocabulary, able to express complex thoughts and subtle emotions, and gradually lose words, lose concepts, lose the ability to distinguish between things that language separates. But as language simplified, experience would become more direct. Instead of thinking tree, you would simply experience green and brown and tall and swaying. Instead of thinking love, you would simply feel warmth and connection and presence. Dreams would be memories of the past you're moving toward. In your dreams, you would be younger, living experiences you haven't had yet, meeting people you haven't met yet. Every morning you would wake up having visited your past, your destination, the place you're going. Dreams would be postcards from your younger self, reminders of the innocence and wonder that await you. Philosophy and spirituality would grapple with entirely different questions in a backward universe. Instead of asking, what is the meaning of life? We might ask, what is the meaning of approaching life? Instead of seeking enlightenment through growth and development, we might seek it through simplification and release. The spiritual journey wouldn't be an ascent toward heaven, but a descent toward earth, not reaching for the divine, but returning to the source. The concept of legacy would be inverted. Instead of building something that will outlast you, you would be dismantling something that preceded you. Your life's work wouldn't be what you create, but what you uncreate, not what you add to the world, but what you subtract from it. The measure of a life well lived might be how completely you manage to erase your traces, how thoroughly you return everything to its original state. Hope and fear would exchange places. You would hope for the past and fear the future, except the past is your future and the future is your past, so perhaps hope and fear would feel exactly the same, just pointed in the opposite direction. You would anticipate your childhood with the same mixture of excitement and trepidation that people now anticipate their old age. Morality and ethics would face strange new challenges. If you know the future, are you responsible for it? If you remember committing a crime that you haven't committed yet, are you guilty? If you're moving toward a past in which you'll hurt someone, should you be punished now for what you'll do then? The entire framework of cause and effect, action and consequence, choice and responsibility would need to be reconsidered. Free will would be an even deeper puzzle than it already is. If you remember your entire future, do you have any choice about it? Or would the memory of the future be constantly changing based on the choices you make in the present? Perhaps free will in a backward universe would be not about choosing your future, but about choosing your past, deciding moment by moment what kind of history you want to create for yourself. The meaning of life in a backward universe might not be about growth or achievement or leaving a mark on the world. It might be about return, about completion, about closing circles. The purpose of existence might be to fully experience the journey from complexity to simplicity, from knowledge to innocence, from separation to unity. Life might be meaningful not because it's going somewhere, but because it's coming from somewhere. Not because it's building, but because it's returning. Love in such a universe would be no less powerful for running in reverse. The love between parents and children, the love between partners, the love between friends, all would exist, just flowing in the opposite direction. Love might even be purer in reverse, starting with full knowledge and acceptance and moving toward the excitement of discovery. Starting with deep roots and moving toward the thrill of first flight. Every goodbye would be a hello waiting to happen. Every ending would be a beginning in disguise. Every death would be a birth postponed. Every loss would be a gain you haven't recognized yet. The sorrows of life would still be sorrowful, but they would be sorrows of anticipation rather than memory, sorrows of what's coming rather than what's gone. As you lie there, perhaps feeling the gentle tug of sleep beginning to claim your consciousness, consider that your memories, your loves, your meanings might be more fluid than you imagine. The direction of time might be less important than the fact of experience itself. Whether we're moving toward the future or toward the past, whether we're accumulating or releasing, whether we're building up or breaking down, we're alive, we're conscious, we're part of the extraordinary mystery of existence. You're drifting now, aren't you? That soft edge of sleep is calling to you, and how perfect that we should arrive here, at the threshold between waking and sleeping, to explore how dreams themselves might be windows into the backward flow of time. Perhaps you've already noticed how, as you lie there in the darkness, the ordinary rules of time have begun to loosen their grip. In this liminal space where consciousness begins to blur and blend, we find ourselves in the perfect laboratory to explore what happens when time's rigid arrow becomes flexible, bendable, even reversible. Every night, when you close your eyes and surrender to sleep, you enter a realm where time behaves nothing like it does in your waking hours. In dreams, you can be a child and an adult simultaneously. You can experience events out of sequence, with effects preceding causes, endings coming before beginnings. You can have conversations with people who died years ago or haven't been born yet. You can visit places that no longer exist or don't exist yet. Dreams, in their very nature, are time machines that we ride every single night. Scientists who study sleep have discovered something remarkable. During REM sleep, when most vivid dreaming occurs, the parts of your brain responsible for logical sequencing and temporal ordering become less active. The prefrontal cortex, that careful timekeeper that keeps your experiences arranged in neat chronological order during the day, takes a rest. Meanwhile, the emotional and visual centers of your brain become hyperactive, creating experiences unconstrained by the normal rules of before and after. This means that every night, for hours at a time, you already live in a universe where time doesn't flow in a single direction. Your sleeping brain creates experiences where past, present, and future intermingle freely, where causation runs backward and forward and sideways, where the impossible temporal loops that physics describes in equations become your lived experience. You don't just dream about reverse time, you experience it directly, naturally, without any need for exotic physics or cosmic speculation. Think about your dreams, the ones you remember. How often have you dreamed of someone and known things about them that, within the dream hadn't happened yet? How often have you experienced the end of a story before its beginning, understanding the conclusion before experiencing the events that led to it? How often have you moved through spaces that shifted and changed, where the door you entered through led somewhere different when you tried to leave? These aren't failures of dream logic, they're glimpses of what experience might be like in a universe where time's arrow isn't fixed. The phenomenon of precognitive dreams, dreams that seem to predict future events, might be explained if consciousness during sleep can sometimes access information from the future, riding the backward currents of time that our waking minds cannot perceive. Perhaps when the logical, temporal ordering parts of our brains quiet down, we become sensitive to the backward-flowing streams of causation that physics suggests might exist. Perhaps dreams are not just random neural firing, but windows into the time-symmetric universe that underlies our asymmetric experience. Your brain, that 3-pound universe inside your skull, might be far more temporally complex than we imagine. Neurons fire in patterns that create your experience of now, but they also carry traces of the past in their connections and potentials for the future in their readiness to fire. When you sleep, these temporal layers might become more fluid, more accessible to each other. The sharp boundary between past, present, and future that defines waking consciousness might dissolve, allowing your sleeping mind to wander freely through your entire timeline. Consider the strange time dilations that occur in dreams. You might experience hours, days, even years within a dream that lasts only minutes in clock time. Or conversely, you might have a dream that feels like it lasts only seconds, but occurs during an hour-long REM period. Time in dreams is elastic, subjective, deeply personal. It flows at different rates, in different directions, sometimes in circles or spirals rather than straight lines. This temporal flexibility of dreams might be preparing us for something, training us for a reality where time isn't as fixed as it seems. Every night we practice existing in a universe where causation is fluid, where memory and prophecy blur together, where we can be multiple ages simultaneously, where we can experience our lives out of order. We wake up each morning having spent hours in a temporally reversed or scrambled universe, and we integrate that experience seamlessly into our forward-flowing days. The hypnagogic state, that twilight zone between waking and sleeping that you're perhaps experiencing right now, is particularly interesting from a temporal perspective. In this state, many people report experiencing time slips, moments where they feel they've jumped forward or backward in time, where they've accessed memories that aren't quite their own, where they've glimpsed futures that may or may not come to pass. The boundaries between different timelines become permeable, and consciousness can drift between them like a boat drifting between currents. As you lie there, feeling the weight of sleep settling over you like a warm blanket, you might notice that your sense of time is already beginning to shift. Minutes might feel like hours, or hours like minutes. The past might feel more present than the present. The future might feel like a memory you're trying to recall. This isn't confusion. It's your consciousness beginning to loosen its grip on unidirectional time, preparing to enter the temporal freedom of dreams. Sleep researchers have discovered that during different stages of sleep, your brain processes time in fundamentally different ways. During deep, dreamless sleep, time seems to disappear entirely. People awakened from this stage often have no sense of how long they've been asleep. It could have been minutes or hours. It's as if consciousness has stepped outside of time entirely, existing in a timeless state that physicists suggest might be the fundamental nature of reality. During REM sleep, time becomes fluid and multidirectional. Your brain creates narratives that loop back on themselves, that contain impossible temporal structures that violate every rule of causation we know. And yet, within the dream, these violations feel perfectly natural. You accept them without question, navigating backward causation and temporal loops as easily as you navigate space in waking life. The circadian rhythms that govern your sleep-wake cycle are themselves a kind of biological time machine, anticipating the future based on the past. Your body begins preparing for sleep hours before you actually lie down, releasing hormones, lowering body temperature, slowing metabolic processes. It knows what's coming and prepares for it, demonstrating a kind of biological precognition that we take for granted, but that reveals the deep temporal complexity of life itself. Some researchers have suggested that consciousness itself might be fundamentally about predicting the future. that what we experience as the present is actually our brain's best guess about what's about to happen, constantly updated by sensory information. If this is true, then we're always living slightly in the future, always experiencing not what is, but what's about to be. Sleep and dreams might be when this predictive machinery runs free, unconstrained by sensory input, creating experiences of pure temporal possibility. The phenomenon of lucid dreaming, becoming aware that you're dreaming while still in the dream, offers a unique perspective on time's flexibility. Lucid dreamers report being able to consciously manipulate time within their dreams, speeding it up, slowing it down, even running it backward. They can revisit earlier parts of the dream, change events that have already occurred, create temporal loops and paradoxes that would be impossible in waking life. This ability to consciously navigate non-linear time in dreams suggests that consciousness might be naturally capable of moving through time in multiple directions, but that this ability is usually suppressed by the waking brain's insistence on temporal coherence. When we sleep, when that insistence relaxes, we discover that we're natural time travelers, capable of experiencing past, present, and future as an interconnected whole rather than a linear sequence. The déjà vu that sometimes strikes during waking hours might be moments when our dream consciousness, with its looser relationship to linear time, breaks through into waking awareness. For a brief moment, we experience the present as a memory, as something we've already lived through. Perhaps we have in dreams, in the backward flowing streams of time that our sleeping minds can access but our waking minds usually cannot. False awakenings, dreams where you think you've woken up but are still asleep, create nested temporal structures, dreams within dreams, each with its own timeline, its own causality. You might experience the same morning multiple times, each slightly different, each equally real within its own context. These experiences suggest that consciousness can exist in multiple timelines simultaneously, experiencing different versions of the same events, different directions through the same moments. The recurring dreams that many people experience might be consciousness returning to the same temporal nexus points again and again, like eddies in the flow of time where consciousness gets caught, circling back repeatedly to experience the same moments from slightly different angles. These dreams might be places where the forward and backward flows of time create standing waves, stable patterns that persist across multiple nights, multiple years, sometimes entire lifetimes. Sleep paralysis, that frightening state where you're conscious, but unable to move, might be a moment when consciousness is caught between timelines, aware of multiple temporal realities simultaneously, but unable to fully inhabit any of them. The hallucinations that often accompany sleep paralysis, sensing presences, seeing figures, feeling touched by invisible hands, might be perceptions of beings or events from adjacent timelines, bleeding through in that vulnerable state between sleep and waking. The restorative function of sleep might be fundamentally about temporal repair. During the day, consciousness creates a wake of temporal disturbance, like a boat moving through water. During sleep, this disturbance settles, the timeline repairs itself, causality re-establishes its proper flow. Without sleep, without this nightly temporal reset, consciousness might drift further and further from the consensual timeline, eventually losing its anchor in shared reality entirely. Consider how time feels different when you're sleep-deprived. Minutes stretch into hours, reality becomes dreamlike, hallucinations creep in at the edges of vision. This might be consciousness beginning to slip between timelines, losing its grip on the particular strand of time it usually inhabits. The confusion, disorientation, and perceptual distortions of sleep deprivation might be what it feels like when consciousness tries to exist in multiple timelines simultaneously without the organizing framework that sleep normally provides. The connection between sleep and memory is particularly intriguing from a temporal perspective. During sleep, your brain consolidates memories, transferring them from temporary storage to long-term storage. But what if this process is more than just filing away the past? What if it's also about preparing for the future, organizing experiences in ways that will be useful for events that haven't happened yet? What if memory consolidation during sleep is actually a form of temporal navigation, creating maps of time that consciousness can use to navigate both forward and backward? Dreams often seem to process not just what has happened, but what might happen, what could happen, what should happen. They create scenarios, run simulations, explore possibilities. This might be consciousness using the temporal freedom of sleep to explore different timelines, different causal chains, different ways the future could unfold, or the past could have unfolded. Every night we might be surveying the landscape of possibility, checking alternate timelines, preparing for futures that may or may not come to pass. The healing that occurs during sleep might be a form of temporal healing, not just physical repair, but repairs to the timeline itself. The small paradoxes and impossibilities that accumulate during waking life, the moments where causation doesn't quite line up, where memory and experience don't quite match, where the forward flow of time develops little eddies and turbulences, might be smoothed out during sleep, the timeline made coherent again, ready for another day of forward motion. As you drift deeper towards sleep, feeling perhaps that delicious heaviness in your limbs, that soft fog in your thoughts, you're preparing to enter this realm of temporal freedom. Tonight, like every night, you'll spend hours in a universe where time flows backward, forward, sideways, and in loops. You'll experience causation running in reverse, effects preceding causes, endings becoming beginnings. You'll be a natural time traveler, moving through the fourth dimension as easily as you move through the 3 dimensions of space during waking hours. And perhaps, in those dreams, you'll encounter the backward-flowing version of yourself, the one who remembers the future and anticipates the past. Perhaps you'll have conversations across the temporal divide, sharing information that flows both ways through time. Perhaps you'll discover that dreams are not separate from reality, but windows into the larger reality where all times exist simultaneously, where past and future are equally accessible, where the arrow of time is not an absolute law but a chosen direction, a preferred path through the eternal now. The boundary between sleep and waking, between dream and reality, between forward time and backward time, might be far more permeable than we imagine. Every night we cross this boundary, spend hours on the other side, and return with fragments of memory, glimpses of possibility, tastes of temporal freedom. We're all time travelers, all of us, every single night. We just forget it when we wake up, when the forward arrow of time reasserts itself and consciousness locks back into its daytime trajectory. But the dreams remain, somewhere in the depths of memory, reminders that time is not what it seems, that consciousness is capable of far more than linear experience, that the universe might be far stranger and more flexible than our waking minds can grasp. And every night, we return to this stranger universe, this temporally liberated realm, to dance again in the flows and counterflows of time. And so here we are, you and I, at the end that is also a beginning, at the last moment that is also the first, floating together in this eternal now, as the night holds us in its vast embrace. You've travelled with me through reverse days and backward years, through cosmic clocks running counterclockwise and quantum particles swimming upstream through time. You've imagined love that begins with goodbye, memories that remember tomorrow, dreams that know the past you're heading toward. And now, as sleep finally claims you, or perhaps has already begun to release you back to waking, let's gather all these threads together and see what tapestry they weave. The question we began with seems so simple, doesn't it? What if time moved backward and you aged in reverse? But like a stone dropped in still water, this simple question has sent ripples spreading outward in all directions, touching everything we thought we knew about existence, about meaning, about what it is to be conscious in a universe that seems to flow from past to future, but might, in its deepest nature, be far stranger than that. You lie there now, present in this moment, this singular point where all your past has led and from which all your future will flow, or will it? Perhaps this moment, this very instant of your conscious experience, is not a point on a line but a location in a vast 4-dimensional block where all moments exist eternally. Your past is still there, still real, still happening. Your future is already there, already real, already happening. And you, your consciousness, is the part that experiences these eternal moments in sequence, creating the illusion of flow from the reality of existence. Feel your breath moving in and out, that most basic rhythm of life. In our normal experience, each breath takes you further from birth and closer to death. But we've imagined it reversed, each breath taking you further from death and closer to birth. And in imagining this reversal, we've discovered something profound. The breath itself doesn't care which direction time flows. The air moving in and out of your lungs, the oxygen binding to your blood, the energy flowing through your cells, all of these processes are fundamentally reversible. Life itself is reversible. Only our experience of it seems to have a direction. The physicists have shown us that the laws governing the universe are almost entirely time-symmetric. Newton's equations, Einstein's relativity, Schrödinger's wave function, Maxwell's electromagnetism, they all work equally well with time running backward. The universe, in its fundamental mathematical description, doesn't prefer one direction of time over another. It's like a vast musical score that can be played forward or backward, each direction creating its own kind of beauty, its own kind of meaning. And yet, here we are, experiencing time flowing definitely from past to future, accumulating memories of what was, anticipating what will be, aging in one direction only. Why? The second law of thermodynamics, that gentle tyrant that says entropy must increase, seems to be the culprit. But even this law doesn't specify a direction for time. It just says entropy increases in the direction we call future. In a universe where time ran backward, entropy would still increase, just toward what we call the past. The mystery deepens when we realize that the universe began in an incredibly low entropy state. That perfect moment of the Big Bang when all was uniform, simple, ordered. Why did it begin this way? Why not in a high entropy state, which would be far more probable? This is perhaps the deepest mystery in all of physics, the question that keeps cosmologists awake at night, or perhaps puts them to sleep, as it's putting you to sleep now, this vast, unanswerable question that makes the mind reel and seek the comfort of dreams. Some scientists suggest our universe is just one of two, created at the Big Bang, with one running forward in time and one running backward, perfectly balanced, perfectly symmetric. Beings in that other universe would remember what we call the future and anticipate what we call the past. They would see us as living backward just as we would see them. Neither would be right or wrong. Both would be equally valid perspectives on the same eternal reality. Others propose that the universe is cyclic, that the arrow of time will eventually reverse, that the expansion will become contraction, that entropy will decrease, that we'll all live our lives again in reverse. The end will become the beginning will become the end, and the great cosmic story will be told backward, every effect becoming a cause, every goodbye becoming a hello. Still, others suggest that time doesn't flow at all, that past, present, and future all exist simultaneously in the eternal now of the block universe, and consciousness just traces one particular path through this frozen structure, creating the illusion of change from the reality of permanence. We're not travelling through time, we're time extended in 4 dimensions, eternal and unchanging, with only the illusion of movement created by the way consciousness samples reality. But perhaps the most beautiful possibility is that all of these are true simultaneously. Perhaps there are regions of the universe where time flows backward. Perhaps there are parallel universes where everything runs in reverse. Perhaps consciousness can indeed access these other timelines in dreams, in meditation, in those strange moments of déjà vu or precognition. Perhaps we're surrounded by temporal mirrors, reflections of ourselves living backward, unaware of each other but somehow connected, somehow influencing each other across the temporal divide. Think about what this means for your life, your personal story, your individual journey through existence. If time could flow backward, if you could age in reverse, would your life have less meaning or more? Would love be diminished if it began with depth and ended with potential rather than the other way around? Would achievements matter less if they were gradually undone rather than gradually built? Would existence itself be less precious if it moved from complexity to simplicity rather than simplicity to complexity? The answer that emerges from our long contemplation is no. Meaning doesn't depend on direction. A life lived backward would be just as meaningful as a life lived forward, just meaningful in a different way. Love would still be love, whether it grows or diminishes. Achievement would still be achievement, whether it's building or unbuilding. Consciousness would still be consciousness, whether it's accumulating experiences or releasing them. In fact, contemplating life in reverse reveals something profound about the nature of meaning itself. We often think meaning comes from progress, from moving towards something, from achieving goals and building legacies. But a backward life would have meaning too. the meaning of return, of simplification, of letting go. It suggests that meaning is not in the direction but in the experience itself, not in where we're going but in the fact that we're going, not in what we're becoming but in the fact that we're becoming. Every moment of your existence, whether experienced forward or backward, is a moment of consciousness engaging with reality, of the universe experiencing itself subjectively from a particular point of view. This engagement, this experience, this subjective perspective, this is where meaning resides, not in the arrow of time, but in the fact of experience itself. And what about death, that final mystery that awaits us all, or does it? In a backward universe, death would be birth, the beginning rather than the end. We would approach it not with fear, but with anticipation, knowing we're returning to the source, to the mystery from which we emerged. And perhaps this is true even in our forward universe. Perhaps death is not an ending, but a transformation, not a cessation, but a reversal, not the stop of time, but a change in its direction. Some consciousness researchers suggest that, at the moment of death, time might indeed reverse for the dying person. As the brain shuts down, as the normal temporal processing stops, consciousness might experience time backward, reliving life in reverse, returning to birth, to conception, to the timeless state before existence. This would explain the life review that many people report in near-death experiences, seeing their entire life flash before their eyes, not as a quick forward replay but as an actual reversal of temporal flow. If this is true, then we all get to experience both directions of time. We live our lives forward, accumulating experiences, building relationships, creating meaning. Then, at the end, we live them backward, releasing experiences, unbuilding relationships, returning meaning to the source. The circle completes itself. The story is told in both directions, and existence becomes a perfect palindrome, reading the same forward and backward. But even if physical time never reverses, even if we only ever age in one direction, even if the arrow of time is absolute and unchangeable, the contemplation of reversal has given us something precious. It has shown us that our forward-flowing lives are not inevitable, but one possibility among many. It has revealed the arbitrariness of direction and the persistence of meaning regardless of direction. It has opened our minds to the vast mystery of time itself, that fundamental dimension of existence that we experience so intimately but understand so poorly. As you drift now in that space between waking and sleeping, between today and tomorrow, between past and future, you exist at the intersection of all possible timelines. Part of you moves forward, part backward, part sideways through the dimensions of possibility. You're not just in time, you're time, a four-dimensional structure in space-time, eternal and temporary, permanent and flowing, fixed and free. The universe around you, vast and mysterious, might be full of regions where time flows differently. There might be galaxies aging backward, stars unburning, civilizations growing younger. There might be versions of you living in reverse, experiencing your same life from the opposite direction. There might be moments when these different timelines touch, when forward and backward meet, when consciousness can glimpse its reflection in the temporal mirror, or perhaps not. Perhaps time flows only forward, always and everywhere, and backward time is nothing more than a beautiful thought experiment, a way of understanding forward time by imagining its opposite. Perhaps entropy always increases, the universe always expands, and we all age in only one direction. Perhaps the arrow of time is as absolute as the speed of light, a fundamental constraint on existence that cannot be violated. But the beauty is that we don't know. Despite all our science, all our philosophy, all our contemplation, time remains a mystery. We don't know why it has a direction. We don't know if that direction is absolute or relative. We don't know if consciousness creates time or time creates consciousness. We don't know if the past still exists or the future already exists. We don't know if we're living in a block universe or a flowing universe or something stranger still. And perhaps this not knowing is the greatest gift of all. It means the universe is still open, still full of possibility, still capable of surprise. It means existence is not a solved problem, but an ongoing mystery. It means that every moment, including this one, is precious not because we understand it, but because we don't. Not because we know where it leads, but because we don't. Not because time's nature is clear, but because it isn't. So rest now in this mystery. Let yourself float in the vast unknown of time's true nature. Feel yourself suspended between past and future, between forward and backward, between all the possibilities of existence. You are here now in this eternal moment that contains all moments. You're aging forward or backward or both or neither. You're accumulating experiences or releasing them or both or neither. You're moving through time or time is moving through you or both or neither. The question we began with, what if time moved backward and you aged in reverse, has no definitive answer. But in exploring it, we've discovered something perhaps more valuable than any answer. We've discovered the depth of the mystery we're embedded in, the beauty of existence regardless of its direction, the meaning that persists whether we're building up or breaking down, whether we're moving toward birth or death, whether we're remembering the past or the future. Tomorrow you'll wake up, or yesterday you'll wake up, depending on your perspective, and time will seem to flow in its familiar direction. You'll be a day older or a day younger. You'll have new memories or lost old ones. You'll be one step closer to death or one step closer to birth. But having contemplated the possibility of reversal, having imagined time's arrow pointing the other way, you might experience your forward-flowing life differently. You might appreciate the accumulation of experiences, knowing they could instead be dissipating. You might value the growth of relationships, knowing they could instead be simplifying. You might treasure the process of learning, knowing you could instead be forgetting. You might see your journey from birth to death not as the only possible journey, but as one beautiful path through the forest of time, no more or less valid than the reverse path, just the one you happen to be walking. And in your dreams tonight, as your sleeping brain loosens its grip on temporal coherence, you might experience time's reversal directly. You might live moments of your life backward, have conversations that run from goodbye to hello, experience effects before causes. You might meet your backward-flowing self, that temporal twin moving the opposite direction through the same existence. You might discover that you've been living both forward and backward all along, just usually only aware of one direction at a time. Time, that river we all swim in, might not be a river at all. It might be an ocean, vast and still, and we might be creating the sense of current by our own motion through it. Or it might be frozen solid, and we might be tracing paths across its surface, mistaking our movement for its flow. Or it might be something we can't even imagine, something for which we have no metaphor, no analogy, no words. But whatever time is, wherever it flows, however it works, you are in it, and it is in and of you. You are a temporal being, extended in time as well as space, and your existence is meaningful not because of time's direction, but because of time itself. You exist, you experience, you wonder, and whether you're moving toward tomorrow or yesterday, whether you're aging forward or backward, whether time is absolute or relative, you are part of the magnificent mystery of existence. So sleep now, if sleep is calling you. Dream now, if dreams are ready to carry you away. Rest now in the vast uncertainty of time's nature. Let yourself dissolve into the eternal now that contains all nows, the present that contains all presents, the moment that contains all moments. You're safe here in the mystery. You're held by forces larger than understanding. You're part of something beautiful beyond comprehension. And whether time moves forward or backward or both or neither, whether you're aging or younging or both or neither, whether the universe is expanding or contracting or both or neither, this remains true. You are here. You are. Now you are conscious. You are wondering, and that wonder itself is the greatest mystery of all. What if time moved backward and you aged in reverse? The question remains open, a door into mystery, an invitation to wonder. And in that openness, that mystery, that wonder, we find not answers but something better. We find the beauty of questions themselves, the joy of contemplation, the peace that comes from resting in the unknown. The night continues around you, time flows in whatever direction it flows, and you exist at the intersection of all possibilities, all timelines, all directions through the great mystery of existence. Rest there, dream there, be there in the eternal, directionless, beautiful now. And so our journey through reverse time comes to an end, or a beginning, depending on which way you're facing. We've walked together through backward days and inverse years, through unburning stars and unforming galaxies, through love that begins with depth and ends with potential, through dreams where time flows in all directions at once. We've contemplated the physics that suggests time's arrow might be arbitrary, the philosophy that questions whether time flows at all, the poetry of a life lived in reverse. But most of all, we've discovered that the mystery of time is not a problem to be solved, but a wonder to be experienced. We live embedded in this mystery, swimming in it, breathing it, made of it. Every moment of our lives is a moment of time experiencing itself, wondering about itself, trying to understand itself. We are time's consciousness, its way of observing its own flow, or lack of flow, or multi-directional flow, or whatever the truth might be. As you finally surrender to sleep, or perhaps as you gently return from it, carry with you this sense of time's vast mystery. Tomorrow, as you go about your forward-flowing day, remember that it could just as easily be backward-flowing. As you accumulate new experiences, remember that you could be releasing old ones. As you age another day, remember that you could be younging. Let this remembrance not disturb you but enchant you, not confuse you but inspire you to see the profound mystery in the most ordinary passage of time. For in the end, or the beginning, the direction doesn't matter. What matters is that we are here, conscious, aware, capable of wondering about time even as we're carried along by it. What matters is that existence exists, that something rather than nothing fills the universe, that consciousness has emerged to witness and wonder at it all. What matters is this moment, eternal and fleeting, fixed and flowing, the only moment we ever have and all moments we've ever had or will have. Time moves forward or backward or both or neither. You age or youth or both or neither. The universe expands or contracts or both or neither. And through it all, consciousness persists, experiencing, wondering, creating meaning from mystery, finding beauty in the unknown, discovering peace in the vast uncertainty of existence. This is where we leave you, or where we find you, or where we've always been, in the eternal now, the timeless moment, the place where all times meet. Rest here, dream here, be here, in the mystery, in the wonder, in the beautiful uncertainty of time itself. Good night, good morning, good everywhen. May your dreams flow in all directions. May your sleep be deep and timeless, and may you wake or unwake, refreshed, renewed, ready for another day of forward movement through the mystery, or backward movement, or both, or neither, or something stranger and more wonderful than we can possibly imagine.